some sort of, science-based explanation that I don't know of like that.
Could be, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, as far as I know, you and I, Steph, are the only ones that have ever experienced that. Then again, I
Yeah.
don't really have a lot of
And now
opportunities
Kira.
for me to share this. Yeah, now Kira just
Yeah.
now.
Right.
All right, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Aflixionados podcast, episode 36. Available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. Find us on YouTube at Aflixionados podcast. Please give us a like and subscribe. The link to our merch store can be found down in the descriptions of our episodes. My name is Eric, and the other voices occupying your head this time are a proud mother of three, lab geek, comic nerd, my sister, co-host, Stephanie.
Woo! Or something.
And a man of many trades, philosopher, charmer, my good friend, colleague, and co-host, Michael.
Hello.
You guys are like my alternate personalities or something.
Shit.
Here on Aflixionados podcast, we mainly talk about films that range from mind-numbing to mind-blowing. We also cover TV shows and other forms of media. Of course, we will be getting into spoilers here, and there will only be the healthiest amount of expletives tossed in. You have been warned. If you're ready, then get ready. Because in this episode, we will be discussing the science fiction, psychological thriller, FX TV series, Legion, airing in 2017 through 2019, created by Noah Hawley.
We've been waiting for this one, haven't we, Michael?
Fuck yeah.
It's been a minute. I gotta stay hydrated here with my Rockstar. It says grape on it, but it very much tastes exactly like the color purple. How you imagine that to taste?
Of no relation to the Oprah Winfrey movie Oppression.
It tastes like oppression. So, we're going to treat the show similar to how we treated Game of Thrones and Twin Peaks. We're going to take turns, and if two of us or maybe all three of us chose the same episode, then, we'll all just chime in and include that as an episode for all of us. So that way we don't make this episode like 6 hours long. We'll roughly choose about 3 episodes each, and then, just explain when we switch from season 1 to season 2 to season 3, and then hopefully it's not too confusing. We're trying to make it not as erratic as the show itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For season 1, Steph and Michael both chose episode 1. Go ahead and start us off here.
Well, I feel like this is a pretty important episode because it's your whole introduction into the world, right? I don't know if I'm sure you did notice, but they throw in as many X-Men X's as they can throughout the show. Because interesting things that I actually didn't know anything about Legion or David Haller going into this show. I obviously have, some exposure to X-Men. I grew up with the cartoon and
X-Men saving the day.
Not that one.
No, okay. Do you know that intro? That intro song? That's the good one. But did you know that before that one, it actually had like an actual jingle?
Oh, no.
Oh, you don't know? Oh, my gosh.
Steph,
we're going to have to send this one to you later. Yeah. It's from like the 70s or something like that.
Oh, my gosh. That's what kids want.
So through this show, I found out... Eventually, they reveal, if you didn't know, way later, that David Haller is, can I say it? Mild spoilers. If you ain't ready to get ready. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Professor X's son. Surprise, if you didn't know that already.
Michael, did you go in knowing that, or did you find out as you watched the show?
That's a good question. I was actually thinking, yeah. So you, Steph, you just mentioning that intro, not knowing what it was really about, introduction to Legion and everything, and I had heard about the show, and now as I'm thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I wonder if one of the big reasons why people don't tune into it is for the same reason I didn't tune into it right away. It wasn't until I was not comfortable watching the show until I found out it was X-Men. It was X-Men related. I was like, oh, what? It's part of the Marvel. Oh, not. Well, it's part of the X-Men universe, whatever. Mm-hmm. Marvel Universe, but also the name Legion is like it's scriptural, and it's not good. So I was like, what? Like when I heard about this, I was like, I'm not watching that show. Like I'm not trying to go out of my way looking for trouble here.
Did you think it was
Because
more of a kind of spiritual show rather than like science fiction?
yeah, I thought it was gonna be a little bit more like, oh, we're gonna be here we go doing like spiritual stuff. It's gonna be battling the devil kind of thing
Yeah,
because
angels versus
in
demons.
not too far exactly, but it was not so literal where it's like demons and angels. It was like it's well in the scripture what it says is something like paraphrasing here, there is a demon in I forget who, but basically they say it says when this person asks them who they are, this person says, my name is Legion, we are Legion for we are many. And the only way that he gets rid of them is I think Jesus casts this devil or demons, these multiple demons out of this being, and they all go into the swine, these pigs, and they all run off this cliff and die. So I was like, I'm not trying to get like these demons, like multiple demons and shit. So when I found out that it had nothing to do with that at all whatsoever, I was like, oh, okay. And later on, found out actually just after just doing research for the show and everything, found out that the name Legion is legitimately only mentioned one time, and I believe it is by Amal Farouk.
There's more. No, there's more because in the third season, when they're in the cult house or whatever, when Sid switches places with David, thinking that she's gonna do something or whatever, and then she's at in his mind at the cult house, and all the other Davids start coming out, and they're like, oh, what do you think you're gonna do? You're gonna be doing, like they're, we're here, like we are Legion, and so they
That's the
Oh,
explicitly
only
ask
time I
that.
remember hearing it. But yeah, I think it is only like one time, one or two times in the entire
Yeah.
show.
yeah. Wow.
So what happens in episode one, the pilot?
Man, I mean, it starts off with him like kind of flashbacks throughout his life, right? Like, doesn't the whole show start off with him as a baby, like standing in that crib or whatever?
Boom, 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 boom. Jack,
Oh
da, da,
man.
da, da, da. It's like
Oh
a
yeah,
happy
that's right.
tune. But yeah, he starts off happy, and then you just see this de-evolution. He just starts to all. He was a sweet boy, and then suddenly he becomes violent and erratic and maniacal. Laughing like a crazy person, and these crowds of people are surrounding him. That's literally like the first few frames.
Yeah, and then when he busts out the police car's windows, yeah, and then
Mm-hmm.
finally lands on him in the psych ward, right? Or the
Right.
psychiatric hospital, not just a ward, a whole hospital. Clockworks. That's what the hospital is called, and he's been there for 6 years. And I think the most important things kind of that happen in this is that, well, he's been there for a long time, for having episodes of schizophrenia.
And he's heavily medicated, right?
Yeah. So he tried to kill himself with an extension cord. He tried to hang himself with an extension cord. And
Mm-hmm.
so he ended up in Clockworks, and here introduced to his friend Lenny, who is Aubrey Plaza. And then Sydney shows up. He
Hey,
gets
girl.
all starry eyed or whatever. Yeah, he sees her, and it's like love at first sight or what. And at first, she's obviously like very uncomfortable.
We don't know why
Figure out that
exactly.
she doesn't. Yeah, and well, you eventually figure out she doesn't like being touched. I think some orderly tries to like touch her or something. She's like, don't touch me. I can't remember what he says, but it was something insightful. I wish I could remember exactly what he said. No, something she said. Something she said about like, oh, are our problems really problems? um or is it just you saying that they're problems, kind of thing, something insightful like that, super super in depth. And he's just like, you want to be my girlfriend?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, sure.
I mean, he went for it. It kind of felt like a playground sort of relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like in
Yeah,
Very,
elementary
very
school.
innocent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. Because they walk around, and obviously they can't touch, and so it's very cute, right? And then it gets fun because Sid's finally getting discharged.
How long was she there for?
I don't
Seemed
know
like she
how.
wasn't
It
there very
never
long.
says how long. Yeah, I don't think she was there. It never said really how long she was there for, but she was getting discharged. David decides to shoot a shot or whatever, and he goes in and kisses her, and then it's revealed that she has a power because, well, at first you don't know what's going on, but like he kisses her and they get blown apart, and then all of a sudden David's screaming no 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 no, and Sid's just like really disoriented. um at that point it's kind of from Sid's point of view, she's all disoriented, and eventually she looks in the mirror and she's like, oh no, and then you figure out that they've switched bodies. But the unfortunate thing is that since they've switched bodies, Sid's now in this super unstable, super powerful, psychic telekinetic body, and accidentally causes an incident that removes all the doors in the place and just replaces them with solid walls. But it turns out that somebody was happened to be going through one of those doors at the time that the door switched to a wall. And that poor unfortunate soul was Lenny, who you find, well, the way she put it, her face was in one room and her tits were in another, or whatever she said.
I like the way that she described that. That was hilarious, but also like pretty sad at the same time.
Right. So anyway, she was dead, but her consciousness was saved.
She transcends in some way, right? But you think she's dead, and then suddenly she's talking to David, and David's like, "I thought you were dead," and she's like, "No, man, I'm not dead. Like I'm free. Whatever."
Look at Lenny. What a character, just hanging there in the wall.
Just chilling.
Typical Lenny.
Blood just streaming down the sides of her face, down the wall.
Right. Horrible. So David's out there, or Sid's out there chilling in the world, and then with David's consciousness in Sid, and then eventually his body comes back to him, and her body goes back to her, which is an interesting way to switch back. It's not just the minds going back; it's the bodies catching up with the minds. And at some point, David's being interrogated in a room. He makes the room explode. He's being interrogated in a pool by this dude named Clark. I think in his mind, he goes back to when he was being chased by Carrie and Patonomy, and then he starts seeing Sid like in the backs of people's heads and stuff. And she eventually is able to corner him and tell him, "You're in the pool. Sink down, little by little, and once you see the lights, go underwater." And so he does exactly what she says, and all of a sudden you see like burnt bodies falling into the water, and I don't know how in the heck Clark survived that, but he only got half of his body burnt and he survived it somehow.
Quick question about this scene. Who was the one that lit the fire? Who's like the pyrokinetic person here?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember them going over that.
I never knew. Yeah, I never knew who the heck, because there wasn't any extra person there, was there, besides
And
Carrie,
Sid can't
Patonomy,
do
and
that.
Sid? No. So I don't know if there's somebody else behind the scenes, but yeah, they don't really.
So what's kind of interesting is when I was researching the character of Legion after the show, one of his personalities, because he has like hundreds and thousands of personalities instead, and one of them is a pyrokinetic. So when he accesses that personality, he can actually create and control fire.
Yeah, it's interesting because the actual character of Legion, obviously there's David Haller, who is kind of the original, and he's the one who can control all the other personalities. But he has literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and I think maybe even up in the thousands of personalities, and they have different powers.
Yeah.
So that's wild. Like he's like unlimited,
Mm-hmm.
Now that I think of it, maybe it was some sort of device that Carrie devised.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah,
So
right.
anyway, yeah, because he's smart like that.
Right.
Anyway, when they run out of there, it's like full on war. They're like dodging things, and there's that one dude that could just flick people off into the ether, and
yeah,
so he's just like flick, and Sid's kicking ass, and they're dodging, running, shooting, blow explosions, and they get down to like the beach, and they're about to escape, and Melanie's there, and they say "I love you." I think, well, doesn't she say it? And then he's just like kind of standing there, and she's like, "Aren't you gonna say it too?"
Yeah.
He's still trying to process everything.
I know. And I'm sitting there at home like, not the time and place, people.
I know.
You're
Bullets flying
running for
by.
your lives, yeah. And that's the first episode. Welcome to Legion.
Nice. So that was episode 1.
Yes.
Well, that is a wrap on Legion. I'm just kidding.
Please like and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, Steph, you have episode 2, so might as well just keep going.
I mean, I guess in general, after that, they start. Well, their goal, according to Melanie, is to show him, pick through his memories, so that they could show him that every instance of his, his schizophrenia is actually a manifestation of his powers, and he's not actually sick, but he has powers. Which eventually you find out that he is definitely both. But at the time, that is their hypothesis, because that's usually the case with other mutants, right? And so they're picking through his memories. Patanomy is a memory artist, and they're picking through his memories, trying to go into his past and show him instances where his powers have manifested. The interesting thing about this, though, and I think this kind of blends through several episodes, is that in picking through his memories are actually resisting Patanomy actively.
Like a defense mechanism. That was pretty cool.
Through little bits and pieces, they eventually figure out that there is something else in David. And also, his sister has been kidnapped. Side note. He goes and gets his sister and takes her back to their old childhood home.
Isn't that one of the last episodes when he takes her home?
Yeah, but I feel like most of the mid chunk, like 2 through whatever, is mostly Amy being kidnapped
Character development.
and them just figuring out how to pick through David's memories.
Oh, no. See, I have 4 through 6, and I got some shit to say.
Okay. Stay away.
All right, so yeah, I got the next 3, as I said. So I got 4, 5, and 6, and then Michael will pick up from 7. So season 1, episode 4, chapter 4. What I liked about this episode is that introduces Oliver, which I think is a cool actor, by the way. The funny thing was, when I first saw the episode, I was describing it to Michael. I was like, who's that guy that's like in an ice cube and he's a little uncomfortable to look at, because it's like super zoomed in on his face, and it's like, oh, they got the gap. Yeah, that's Oliver. So it's funny because at first I was like, I'm not sure how to feel about this guy, but as you see more of him throughout the show, I don't know, I just feel like he kind of charms you. He's a pretty interesting cat.
Got that leisure suit.
Jermaine Clement, cool guy, by the way. But yeah, Oliver lives inside of a giant ice cube.
They call the astral plane. That's how they introduce the astral plane.
So he's also known as the Diver due to his deep sea diver suit that his body is kept in by Melanie, which is kind of creepy. Cryogenic chamber or something.
Mm-hmm.
David is still trapped in his own mind around this time, and he's still trying to make sense of everything and get out of there. Amy, David's sister, as we mentioned before, reveals that it was revealed to Amy that David believes that they had a dog named King, but then she reveals that we never had a dog. Right. So that kind of thickens the plot a little bit, because you're like, what the fuck? Because we've seen these flashbacks with this dog, and like child David, like with this dog, like, okay. And they supposedly never had a dog. So what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah. Well, so I guess something also important to mention is that he's trapped in his mind, because there's something in his mind with him that has kicked everybody else out and taken David, basically.
What I liked about season 1 is, how you were mentioning it shows the X in a lot of the scenes, but I noticed a lot of circles throughout season 1, which was kind of interesting. And it was always around the protagonists. For instance, there's this painting behind Melanie when she's like kind of like therapizing David. This ring perfectly kind of circles the back of her head. Kind of looks like a halo in a way.
I was gonna say
the angels and the demons in Legion.
Right. Analogous.
Obviously the circular window with the actual X, which is like the logo for the show.
X-Men X, yeah.
Right.
I noticed it on the bottom of Sid's dress. She had a bunch of like circles at the bottom, like trim of her red dress. Amy's earrings, they're like circles, but like gradually getting bigger as they hang further down. And then, of course, the ladder that leads up to Oliver's ice cube. So those are all circles. and I thought it was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
And then we got Patanomy, who is looking through David's ex's mind, and I thought this was pretty fucking cool. They spot a buried memory about a lighthouse. So I loved the editing for this part because he's kind of like scrubbing through her memory as Sid is talking to the ex. And so he sees like a little like 1 second frame of like something is like it flashes and sees like what the fuck, and so he rewinds and he sees that flash again. And so he's trying to like pinpoint in on that one suppressed memory. And as soon as he locks in on it, that's when he's able to expand it and go further into it. And it's about a lighthouse. And I was like, what the fuck? That was
Yeah, that's pretty
sick.
cool.
That was sick. No, that was dope.
Yeah.
So this lighthouse is actually where David's old doctor, was it like psychiatrist or something? Dr. Poole.
Yeah.
He lives in a lighthouse. So they're like, all right, cool. That's where we're heading next. And so Patanomy, Sid, and female Carrie, they go to this lighthouse. They track down Dr. Poole, and they're trying to get some answers about David. You know, they're trying to get some more information on David's past. And man, this was the turning point for me. This was kind of like my red wedding for Game of Thrones, because that episode was when I was like, I'm fucking in. So this episode, they're talking to Dr. Poole, and they have no idea that this is a Division 3 trap. You know, the goons start swarming the lighthouse, and then it flashes back to Dr. Poole, and it's none other than Walter, which is Richard Simmons, basically.
Right.
Richardson, exactly.
But Walter is, I guess his thing is he can kind of shapeshift into different people. So yeah, he was pretending to be Dr. Poole to lure them in to the trap. So Patanomy and Sid are trying to escape out of the second floor window or something. And then Carrie is like, I'm fucking tired of running. Let's go. And so she jumps out and just starts like going to town. You know, she starts whooping ass. Hell yeah, this is dope. I like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's always badass.
Walter chases them upstairs, and he's about to, I think he's going to shoot Sid, or he was going to shoot Patanomy or something. And then so Sid touches him, and they switch bodies. So meanwhile, Lenny manipulates David into getting angry because, you know, he's still trapped in his mind and he doesn't know how to get out of his mind. David's just like, ah, and he just breaks out of his mind and teleports to their location as Walter is driving away in this van with his friends. He stops the van because he thinks it's actually Walter, but he didn't realize that Sid switched bodies with Walter, and they crash. And you know, Sid as Walter is kind of disoriented. Walter as Sid tries to flee, you know, and she escapes the van. I thought this was just kind of cool because David is trying to stop Walter, but he doesn't realize that the Sid that he's trying to save is actually Walter, and so he's just like, what the fuck, like what's going on? Walter, back in his normal self, is about to shoot David, and that's when female Carrie jumps in the way and she gets shot instead. There's a little bit of a cliffhanger there because you're like, fuck, did she die already?
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty much the end of episode 4. So a lot of action going on there, and I thought it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Season 1, episode 5, chapter 5. We got female Carrie. She's being treated back at was it Summerland? That's what the headquarters is called.
Yeah.
So she's being treated for her wounds by male Carrie. I just refer to them as female or male because their names sound exactly the same, but they're essentially kind of the same person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're such an interesting character.
I loved that power because it
I
was
know.
so unique. Like I haven't seen anyone else in like the X-Men universe.
Everyone, like Sid's powers, Patonomy's power. I don't even know what
Yeah.
that... Does Melanie even have a power? I don't even know.
I don't think so. So, due to having more of an understanding of the astral plane now that he was able to escape the prison of his own mind, David shows Sydney that he is able to create this like mind palace type of like safe space for both of them mentally, where they can finally be free to be with each other. And I thought this was pretty awesome to see. They're able to touch and kiss and have sex and everything in this astral plane in their minds.
Yeah, in their room.
Right, where she's not physically touching him.
And that was a big step for them in their relationship.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because their relationship is almost entirely mental.
Mm-hmm.
There's never any physicality to it. Side note, I did look it up, and Melanie is human, according to the Legion wiki.
Wow, not a mutant.
Yeah.
She's helpful in season 1, but I feel like she just kind of drops off.
Yeah, I mean, season 2, she's like the opposite of helpful.
Yeah, she falls apart.
Well, she's old. My hands hurt.
Well, now your back's gonna hurt.
Because you just pulled
The
landscaping duty
landscaping, dude.
from, what was that, Happy Gilmore?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so episode 5, right? So yeah, they're finally able to be with each other in that space, that mental space. But what Sid doesn't know is that there's an unwelcome third wheel that hangs out there, and it's fucking Lenny. She like hangs out in the bathroom of that room.
That skank hoe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's kind of interesting that Sid doesn't explore that space. Like she's comfortable just being in that room, but she doesn't realize that there's a bathroom area, and that's where Lenny's kind of just chilling out in David's mind.
Well, she probably doesn't have to pee in the astral plane.
Right. That, and I think that it shows, I mean, just the fact that she's, I mean, the fact that she's naked is vulnerable, right? And she's in those, under those white sheets and everything. So she's vulnerable, but she feels comfortable being vulnerable with him, and so she trusts him. So it's like as though she doesn't really feel the need to do any kind of digging, because she's like, well, he made this room and this is our place, you know? And so she's just like lounging and, you know, just really like enjoying, really soaking up this experience in that bed, while in the other room, I mean, she turns around, she's like, where is David? Right out, like right after they had sex, all of a sudden he's just not there anymore.
And that's when you find out that he's like talking to Lenny in the bathroom, right?
In the bathroom, and it's red. That light
Yeah,
is
it's like
red,
dark
emanating.
and red. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of stemming from that, Lenny eventually convinces David to sneak out and infiltrate Division 3 headquarters by himself and just fucking like, yeah, just fucking kill them all, you know, because Lenny is kind of that devil on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the team arrive, you know, they catch wind that David's gone, and they're like, he went to Division 3, you know, let's go back him up. So they arrive at Division 3 to find everything destroyed. Everyone's massacred. People are in the
Decimated.
fucking floor. People are in the walls, you know, just as we saw before. And if they're not just like ripped apart or incinerated completely, it actually shows some of the stuff that David did to them through the security footage. You know, it shows his heinous acts, and he's just so nonchalant about it. He's almost playful, like vaporizing people.
Yeah.
The screen kind of like flickers a little bit, and you see like the yellow-eyed demon or whatever the fuck that they call him, which is the fat man.
Yeah.
Right, and when they see, which is this horrific looking being, he's creepy, but they also see that in the security camera footage when they're like, what happened here? And they go back and they look over where David had been and all that, and they see him, but then on the security camera, or maybe it's some sort of like infrared camera
Yeah, I
that they
think
have
it's
in the same
security
area,
camera. Yeah.
they can see that this other being, where David should be, is in control. Exactly.
Yeah, and this one's really important because, as you mentioned before, Steph, David went there to go grab Amy, and he takes her back to their childhood home. You know, at first Amy is thinking like, "Oh, this is the real David," but in reality, it's Lenny, or this fat man, right? That's kind of controlling David, and David is kind of like interrogating Amy as to like, "Who are my real parents? You know, I need to know."
And she's like, there's nothing. And then he's like, no, you have a secret. And she's finally like, you're adopted.
And so the team arrive to confront Lenny, who now seems to be separated from David's body, that was kind of interesting that they decided to do that instead of just have it be like one person. As the team is confronting Lenny to save David, Walter sneaks up behind them, and he pushes them aside, and he shoots at David. And that's where everything just fucking freezes, and it gets fucking weird at this point. Apparently, out of desperation, David not only freezes time, but he sends everyone into some sort of version of the astral plane where everyone is back at Clockworks, and they're patients within Clockworks, and Lenny is now their psychiatrist.
And Amy is a nurse. Or an orderly, or whatever you call it.
That's where episode 6 picks up. It's kind of just showing a little bit more of what's going on after that. So the team, obviously not knowing who they are or where they kind of start revealing their internal issues with Lenny. So Melanie struggles with letting go of her husband. Ptonomy is haunted by his mother's death as a kid. Carrie and Carrie go deeper into their backstory about kind of how they first met, you know, how Mel Carey woke up and then he was like, oh, look, I have a friend. And she was like playing with the train set, whatever. Walter feels slower, I guess, like mentally. He feels slower than common people. And so he struggles with his insecurities of being dumb, I guess. And then Sydney struggles with her perception of reality. which that one is kind of like the telltale sign there that it's not real, because Lenny keeps trying to push this. Remember, your thing is that you struggle with perception of reality, and she's like, no, that was never my thing. My thing was that I can't touch people. No, it's reality. And so she's just like, I don't think so. So she's starting. I think she's kind of like the first one that starts realizing that there's something weird going on here.
Yeah.
This is kind of cool because it's almost like a reenactment of episode 1. Like, you're just going through the
Yeah.
normal day-to-day of Clockwork's. Mel Carey, after putting female Carey, to bed, as he's going to sleep, he's visited by Oliver in his diving suit. He's able to almost pull him out of this illusion into the astral plane, where he can explain to Mel Carey what's exactly going on. And what I thought was really cool about this was that, obviously, he's referred to as the diver because of his diving suit, which is a deep sea diving suit. But it's cool because he still uses the suit to dive, but instead of the ocean, he's diving into people's memories and their perception of reality. So I'm like, damn, this is really dope. Like, I love how they're doing this, giving a new spin on it.
Definitely.
He may not have the ability to like just jump into people's minds like David, but he can with the suit. And I thought that was actually really cool. I love that concept.
That is, yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to look at it.
David goes to see Lenny, and Lenny, I think she's kind of starting to get a little impatient with David. And so she's like taunting David and reveals that she met David's biological father and suggests that they team up to become unstoppable, because she's now realizing how much potential David truly has with his powers. And so David resists Lenny's trap, and he gets trapped in some sort of mental casket. And that's when he starts flipping the fuck out. And I think that's the first time you see him create some sort of like other personality, because this personality is generated next to him. And he's like, listen, your mind created me so that way I can calm you down. Now he has like 2 personalities for the first time, which before people thought he had different personalities because of the Shadow King being in his mind.
Yeah, this is actually another him.
Yep. And before the episode closes out, Sid is woken up by the diver again, but this time it's Mel Carey wearing the diver suit. And that's where the episode ends. All right. So, Michael, you got episode 7?
Right, episode 7. So, picking up right where you left off, what's cool about this episode is they begin to finally explain exactly who David is.
Yeah.
And who Amal Farouk is, who turns out to be the Shadow King that we're talking about. I loved this. It was just it just finally brought things together. You're looking for something to hold on to. What's going on here? And finally get a little bit more backstory, and you realize, okay, so he's kind of regathering his or gathering his resources. He's starting to ask questions, put ideas up on like a bajillion chalkboards in like a college almost, or something, like in a big auditorium. But one thing I was going to mention about this part here is turns out that David's father, who we know from since we were mentioning at the beginning, his father is Professor X, who is a telepath. He fights Amal Farouk on the astral plane and defeats him, and separates his body,
his consciousness.
Yeah, separates his consciousness from his body, and they bury his body someplace secret, someplace that no one can find it, because if his body gets united with his consciousness again, he would be unstoppable. Mm-hmm. Then you realize, oh, well, that's how Amal Farouk came into the picture. That's who's in his body. Somewhere along the line, the Shadow King entered into David when David was an infant, and has lived there since as some sort of revenge on Professor X. And so he's exacting his revenge through his son by torturing his son. Meanwhile, so all that's going down. They're still in this room where, so they keep kind of going back and forth. Where in this room where these bullets are still flying very slow, they're flying in a slower form, but they're still.
And that's back at the scene where Walter in present day, or like real time, he's trying to kill David, right? He pushes everyone aside and he tries to shoot him, and so it keeps like revisiting that scene over and over again.
Yeah,
exactly. So so they keep kind of flashing back to that, and that's where really the crux is. It's that's the conflict is there. Death is imminent, and they are trying desperately to find a way to somehow stop these bullets from killing David, and because he seems to be the last hope to save everybody, let alone the fact that he's one of their friends too.
Carrie devises a headband thing, so they're trying to get to David so that they can put it on him, and David still has everyone frozen in time, and he's battling his demons and stuff. But the halo is supposed to subdue Farouk and kind of cage him so that David can come back to himself, and
Oh, right. It isolates Farouk in David's body. Right. Okay.
it puts him in that flat little casket that David was in.
Right. In a physical or technological way, it's able to trap that portion
Dude,
that
healthcare is
Amal
so dope.
The way that Carrie
is.
explained it is that he was able to isolate a second set of brainwaves, and so maybe it has something to do with taking that set of brainwaves and putting it in a little box.
I'm trying to think, is that that's the seventh, and then I don't want. I feel like I'm blending like the eighth and the seventh. They kind of come together. There's this whole climactic
They kind
build
of
up to
do.
this.
Yeah.
Right. So they're there in that room. Uh, um,
But Carrie's able to put the halo on David, and so putting the halo on makes it so he can regain control. Time can go back to normal, and he's actually able to catch the bullets before they reach them,
Damn.
which is nuts.
He's like Neo.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Neo. Exactly.
Anyone want to talk about how Walter dies? Just because it was super creepy. Walter kind of just gets
Right. Walter
mid.
gets, yeah, just
In
kind of like,
Inside Clockworks, he gets mid, but in the real world, he just gets crushed into nothing.
He gets turned into some sort of like cube or something, huh?
Yeah.
Little meat cube.
in Meat Cube. It reminded me of, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Tales from the Crypt.
A
Kind
long
of
time
a
ago.
Yeah, a
campy,
long time
scary
ago.
movie. But it's kind of like an anthology where these stories are unrelated. But I mean, the only way that they're related is they're these bodies in these caskets, and this one is contorted. And the reason why is because this boy who's been basically abused by his dad realizes that he draws this image, a scary image, and he folds the paper, and each fold that he creates like breaks a limb of this person. So it's just kind of interesting to see that. It was weird because it just brought it right back to me. It was just like it just crumbled up like a piece of paper almost, and blood and just, yeah, it's craziness.
Wow.
Anyway, that is what Lenny does to destroy him, and this really showcases to me, I mean, this whole series really showcases Aubrey Plaza's range, and
Oh yeah.
she can go from like this maniacal person, or she can go from like this fun-loving person to this very maniacal and like enjoying creating havoc and hurting people.
I
And
loved her in season 1. She was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
she was, and it was just, and I love this whole part because now I think I don't know if we've moved into episode 8 yet, but
I think we're in episode 8 right now.
okay, yeah, pretty solid.
And you and Steph both have episode 8.
Oh, okay, right on. Yeah, so it becomes like a silent movie, and so they'll move their mouths, and then you'll see like a what do they call those? Like a frame where the words that she just spoke are now shown. I really thought that was a beautiful homage to the old movies as well, but in a like kind of scary way. But anyway, Male Carey, he also devised these sunglasses, or yeah, I don't know if they're sunglasses, just reading glasses that, when worn, can show you what's real. And so all these people that have been attacking them aren't really there.
You know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of 13 Ghosts. Do you guys remember that movie? Like how they can't see the ghosts until they put on the glasses.
Oh, yeah, I love that part where he says, "I'll be right back." No,
Every movie. I got stabbed again,
love
man.
that part. You stabbed me, man. You stabbed me pretty deep, man.
I've never actually seen that movie, but sounds like an interesting premise.
It's it's a product of its time. I don't know if it holds up now, but it was creepy as fuck back then. That was like late 90s, early 2000s, I think.
Yeah.
It was such a like seminal work. Yeah, anyway, it's interesting. Yeah, you're right. I don't know if it holds up, but it was one of those where, I mean, if you watch Citizen Kane, obviously it's like black and white, and you've seen a lot of these devices, these cinematic devices, with even like the frame, the lens, where it's like people that are from different distances are both in focus. And so you're like, oh, okay, I've seen it before, but it's like, no, this all started here. So yeah. Now Walter's dead, but I forget what happens after that. Like so she kills Walter. They're there in Clockworks, and I'm kind of blanking right now.
They kill Walter. And I think it was just after that that's when they got the halo on him, so everything kind of went back to reality.
Well, how do they get because Amal Farouk escapes out of David and goes looking for another host and finds Oliver there. So I guess we can, yeah, I
Oh,
remember.
that's all. No, that's all at Summerland. So, so they get the halo on David, and they take everybody. Everybody goes back to Summerland, and they have him on the table, and that, there's that like red like
In that procedure room or whatever. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And at some point, Farouk is able to talk to Sid, and he basically tells her, because they're trying to extract him, they're trying to separate them in that room, and so he basically tells them like, we're fused together. You can't get me out without killing David. So if you help me escape, then I'll leave David alone.
How do you describe it? He was like, oh, Lenny was like, do you know the process of making spaghetti? Have you ever tried to unmake spaghetti or something like that? And I was like,
soup. It was soup.
Oh, soup. That's what it was. And I was like, damn,
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. That's how embedded Farouk was.
Yeah.
That's how they describe homogeneous mixtures in science. Once it's together, you can't take it apart, So anyway, they're trying to get Farouk out of David, and it's not going well. So then Sid rushes in there and kisses him, and that's when Farouk transfers to her.
And jumps around. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and then they're fighting. I think it's Carrie and Farouk. Carrie and Sid are fighting.
Female Carrie.
Yeah, that's what I said. Carrie. So Carrie kicks him so hard that he like pops out of Sid, and Oliver happens to be in the way, and so like you see Oliver like fly through a doorway, and that's when Farouk enters Oliver, and then like they sneak out at the end of the episode and drive off in the car.
Dang.
Yeah.
They got Oliver.
Poor Oliver.
And is that also when there's like an epilogue where David gets sucked into an orb?
So then it goes through all the credits and stuff, and at the end, David and Sid are just standing on a balcony talking, and the little spherical drone thing comes up and sucks David in and flies off, and that's how it ends. Cliffhanger. He's all screaming like, "Help me!"
I was all like, "Damn, that was a crazy ending." And then with that epilogue, I was just left with, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
What the hell was that?
Yeah.
Because Sid is just kind of like standing there all helpless, like, "Oh no, what do I do?"
Yeah, and then she just goes back inside because what else is she gonna do, right?
Right.
Maybe follow that orb and see where it goes.
Seriously, she does not.
Yeah, I got TV to watch.
It'll work out somehow.
I don't know if we're jumping straight into season 2, but I wanted to mention that it continues on with the perception through David's eyes, because it starts back up when David comes back.
Right. It's from his perspective, right? Because he's the focal point. He's the central character.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting, because to him, and he mentions at some point, he's like, I've only been gone for 20 minutes. And Sid's like, oh, it's been 362 days or whatever she says, which is about a year.
Who's counting?
I know. I was just going to say, now Summerland's gone, and everyone from Summerland is working with Division 3, which is
kind
the
of
opposite of what David's used to, yeah.
So before we jump into season 2, I just want to run this by you guys and just kind of bear with me for a second, because this is going to get a little weird. So going back to Sid and David having sex in this mental astral plane area, right? This almost like mind palace type of thing. I was thinking, let's just go back to that and let's just focus on that Just really focus. No, I
Man.
was actually bringing that up because what if this happened? All right. What if they do have sex in person, like in the real world, but obviously they would switch bodies, right? And it would be really strange, but it could possibly be kind of intense and neurotic if you're like having sex, but like from another perspective. That could still work.
I think it could turn into a total. I think it would turn into a total disaster, because
Never know until you try.
all right, I'm just gonna dive right in. Men and women are achieving different things, making different movements, and all of a sudden you're making like the opposite movement of what you were doing before, and you're not even used to that because you're normally doing the other thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally.
But like the fact that like it's not possible to ever do this, you just assume that it'd be like you're like no, it wouldn't work. But imagine if like they had done this a few times and they're just like just take some
Yeah, that's
practice,
true.
right? And they're just like now it's like a strangely erotic thing where you're like kind of having sex with yourself,
That's just weird.
right? Because you're like looking at
That is
yourself and
weird.
you're just like what the fuck
That's
is
weird.
going on?
That would be weird.
I would not be
That
down
would
for
be
that.
Now, my question would be: would Sid, if would I don't know? I know we know it's possible for Sid to transfer to different people just through Amal Farouk having touched other people to get to eventually getting to Oliver, right? So I know, so we know that it can transfer to. She can connect with a different person, different host, but in light of what you just brought up now, I'm wondering if they tried that, if they would just be in this endless like
keep switching
going
back
and forth of being
Dude, that would be
being the
wild.
but I feel like I feel like to really enjoy that you gotta be like just present, and I feel like you'd be like, whoa, who am I, which one am I, which person am I now? I don't know, you'd be like here, I don't know.
I think that would make me throw up. I'd be like, yeah, and I'm getting motion sickness.
Yeah, right, like consciousness sickness. Oh, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. Maybe no, because she's still in the same body, so I guess it could potentially happen. Because I was thinking about what happened with her mom's boyfriend. I guess it was, but she was in her mom's body at that point, so it's different. Anyway,
and she
which
didn't
we
go
don't get
into his
into.
body.
Right. But then again, she was in her mom's, and her mom's not capable of doing that. Whereas if she were with David, it would be the same person. Does David not touch anybody? Yeah, I'm wondering. Like, anyway, that now we're getting into, now it's like Terminator action here. Which who was Michael Bean's character? Was he born? And then anyway,
all right. Well, moving on to season 2, episode 1 is all Steph and Michael.
Hey, yeah, it feels like everything has changed at this point. Like I said, Division 3 and Summerland are now working together, and everyone just lives at Division 3, and their cafeteria is a conveyor like boat
It's kind of cool. I kind of like
thing.
it. I dig
It's
it.
like conveyor belt sushi, but it's all little. It's like a little river with
Yeah,
boats.
it's pretty
It's
dope.
really cute. I know.
with waffles or something, right?
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on the meal, it depends on the day, but it's always that. So sometimes it's sushi, sometimes it's waffles. So what you get caught up on is A, David's been gone for a year. B, it looks like Farouk has been traveling around inside Oliver. So wherever Oliver is going, they're leaving behind people who are getting infected with this sickness called the catalyst, that leaves them basically like comatose, frozen, standing, but with teeth chattering, which is super freaking creepy.
Yeah.
So all this time they've been collecting all these teeth chattery people, and they just stick IVs in them and keep them alive while they stand there in a room together chattering all together.
Botnet.
That's not good for your enamel.
And I feel bad for those people.
Lift
Like
my shirt up, all enamel.
Oh, enamel.
So stupid.
a year straight of chattering, I was wondering like how bad that would wear down the teeth.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
If
Oh,
there are any
sheesh.
teeth left by the time they wake up.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You look like a gamer girl with that headset on.
I just need the little cat ears. So, what else is going on? Oh, and Division 3 is led by a dude with a basket on his head and the creepy Vermilion. So many creepy things.
They're so unsettling, right? The
They
Vermilion.
are. They have creepy bowl cuts, and they're all women, but they all have mustaches.
Like
Why? It's
cop
never explained.
mustaches.
Never once
Yeah,
explained why
Right.
they have mustaches, but they do. They're all
But they got
women.
these
but they're
really like
attractive
slender
looking.
feminine bodies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Yes,
mm-hmm.
and they actually it's I don't know if you ever noticed, but at some point it is possible to see that their suits are actually see through
I was telling Michael this. Yeah. They're wearing thongs.
yeah, when they're dragging Potatomy into the forest, I saw a butt.
Yep.
Yeah, you did.
And I was like, this got like even weirder because now it's kind of sexy. Like,
Yeah, I was actually
Yeah.
telling Michael that if you focus on them, like you just like really focus in on their face, you can almost just like go past the bowl cut and the mustache and see what they really look like underneath.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And they're
I
really
remember doing that
attractive.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And their voices are like
yeah,
very
robot-y, and that's
Robotic.
also
robot-y.
creepy. Yeah, it's kind of a little
Like auto
uncanny
tune.
valley stuff going on. Yeah, it's kind of cool, but it's creepy.
Yeah. So this was also this was the episode where so Carrie also designed this sort of like sphere. I
Bath?
don't know what they call. I forget what they call it. The bath. Yeah, it's sort of like Minority Report, or the
Yeah,
precogs.
yeah.
So
I love that
he
movie.
can lay it down in there, or
It's an amplifier.
it's right. It amplifies, which is a lot like his dad, right? Professor X used this machine called Cerebro to be able to tap into other mutants, and be
Yeah.
able to.
And the next season, you get to see him making a little pre-Cerebro
Like
situation.
a prototype.
Yeah.
It's actually funny because I was directly comparing this to Cerebro before I even knew that this had anything to do with Professor X at all.
Oh, really? Already in season 2, and you didn't realize, you didn't know that it was X-Men related?
No, I didn't know that it involved Professor X directly.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, oh, it's cool. That's almost like his own little personal Cerebro. It's like a sensor deprivation chamber, but like
Yeah.
it does the opposite and it enhances abilities, right?
Well, I was gonna say there's more on the sensory deprivation chamber in a second, but just a little added tidbit. This is shout out to the two hosts, Greg and Ryan, on GameSpot Universe, who did a little breakdown, or synopsis at least of that first episode of season 2. But so I want to give credit where credit's due. But they explain that what's even cooler about this as well is that the catalyst for Professor X to even create Cerebro was after his epic battle with Amal Farouk. Up
Mm.
until he meets Amal Farouk, he believes all mutants are good. He believes that he can turn anyone, and that there's good in them, and that their powers could be used for good. But Amal Farouk is just a bad egg, and only after beating him does he realize he needs to create something more powerful, and that's why he creates Cerebro. So it's kind of interesting that they basically do the same thing for David. But going back to the sensory deprivation chamber, have either of you guys partaken? I promise I won't go off too far of a tangent with this, but have either of you guys experienced the sensory deprivation chamber at all? Okay.
No.
So I've taken Brenda to do that, and it kind of looks just like that, except it's supposed to be pitch black.
Yeah.
Right. It's pitch black. You have the option. The place that I went to, you had the option to have lights on or not. You had the option to have like kind of ambient music or not. I chose zero of all that stuff, just black, and laying in this salt, very high content of salinity in the water,
So
so
you
you're very
float, right?
buoyant.
Yeah.
Right. But in that state, eventually what ends up happening is, and I thought this, I think now, because I hadn't done this then when I watched this episode, but when you're laying there, eventually you reach a point where you reach a sort of homeostasis where it really felt like, for me, my being felt like that entire room. It felt like I was filling it, because your body reaches the same temperature as the water as well, so all of it feels the same. You're the only, yeah. So basically, you're just there, and it's just you're there with your thoughts,
That's cool.
because we don't stop thinking, So it's all there, and you're kind of you can just, yeah, I don't know, it's really interesting, very relaxed, but although like you said, sensory deprivation, it seems kind of counterintuitive that would be the case where you would feel everything's amplified, but it truly felt that way, at least for me. I don't know if it feels that way for others, but at any rate, him being in there just totally makes complete sense to me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's like plugging him into an amplifier and turning it up to 11.
Turn it up to 11, man.
So episode 2 is Steph.
Yeah, actually, I didn't have episode 2. I had the next one.
Oh, this is me actually. Huh. I was looking at season 1. Whoops.
Did we mention that they know that Farouk is in Oliver and that he is seeking out his body so that he can reunite with his body and become pretty much all powerful again?
Yeah, I think actually that episode 2 does cover that. It kind of
They
explains
touch
that.
on it. Yeah, I think they touched on it in the first episode where they're with that guy, talking to the guy who's head of Division 3 with a basket over his head, and they basically say, yeah, if he gets united, it would be disastrous, or he would be unstoppable.
What's so weird about that too is that when they go to his little his chamber or whatever, you have the vermilion in the background, but they got these like fucking magnifying glasses over their face, so you can
Oh,
see,
right.
you can still
Yeah,
see in
why?
perfect definition their stupid mustaches.
Let's not forget.
I think I have bad news, guys. I think you're gonna have to shave your mustaches.
Just the mustache.
Yeah,
Be the
that's
opposite
it.
of the
The
vermilion.
rest, yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh,
Dude,
like,
imagine being the vermilion for like Halloween.
Oh my god.
yeah.
If I had that body, I would do it.
Dang, don't you
Bowl
tempt me.
cut, mustache, bodysuit, butt crack.
But crack everything you need.
That's right. Nothing more.
I wouldn't mind wearing the suit, but I just don't have the courage to wear the bowl cut. I'll wear a thong in a see-through bodysuit, but not the bowl
I
cut.
got a pretty good butt. Exactly. Yeah, I got a pretty good butt, but I just don't want the bowl cut. Yeah.
See-through bodysuit, sure.
Check.
Bowl cut, I'm out.
Soft pass.
All right, so season 2, episode 2, which is actually chapter 10, if we're going by their chapters for the show. Not that the chapters really mean much of anything. It's kind of arbitrary when you think about it.
Just in order, yeah.
I wanted to, because this is just like a running theme for season 2. Shout out to John Hamm as the narrator, because I mean,
Right.
it's John Hamm. What can't he do? You know?
Yeah,
know,
seriously.
right?
Seriously.
I want to talk about briefly, since we're pretty well into Farouk being his own guy at this point, how smooth that mofo is. I feel like just everything about him is so smooth. Obviously, he's the bad guy, right? But
Is he though?
those lines are blurred. Exactly, those lines are blurred. The good guy isn't all good, and the bad guy isn't all bad. And Farouk, he's been around for thousands of years, and that dude is just so smooth. Like, his teeth are super smooth, his skin is super smooth, his haircut's super smooth, and his accent is super smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That guy is smooth. Like, I could just watch him and listen to him talk all day long.
Yeah, he's very suave, that guy. The character and the actor.
Just seamlessly transitioning into whatever language suits him to get his point across, whatever it is, and it's just
usually
like beautiful.
French in this case.
Yeah, French or Farsi. I think it's Farsi. I'm not sure.
At some point it's Farsi, but most of the time when he's just being smooth, it's just smooth as French.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's just so, yeah, there he is depicted in that like little wind. He's there in that liminal space. They're in like a desert. All of a sudden it's in their head, and it's in David's head, and all of a sudden he's just sitting in front of like this fortune teller booth.
Little cardboard box. Yeah.
Little cardboard cutout, and there he is just sitting there looking at him through the window, and he's just so charming.
With the shades. You know, he's
with
got
the
those
shades on, and he's just like, it's a muscle. You have to use it. And he's like excited. He's like, yes.
So we're gonna have to get together for Halloween. You be Farouk, Eric, you can be David, and I'll be a Vermilion.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Go shopping for that stash.
Episode 2. Due to the visit from future Sydney, also revealing that she was the one that kidnapped David in that flying Pokeball.
Yeah.
He's starting to almost get like these warnings from the future that like, yeah, you know, this is going to be the end of the world and you need to make sure you help Farouk. And so he's just like, what the fuck? But you know, he loves Sid now, and so he still loves
Trust her
Sid, you
then,
know, from the
yeah.
future. And so why would he second guess her? So even though she has one less arm in the future, you know, he still
Right.
loves her.
Less risk of touching people by accident.
That's
There
right.
you go.
He kind of agrees, but he doesn't really tell his team, including present Sid. He's just kind of like holding it to himself, but he's like, all right, you know, I trust her. So I guess
Which is probably a mistake.
one of the many that he makes throughout the series, right?
Yeah.
They're basically trying to help Farouk find his true body in this season. That's kind of like the bulk of this season, right? Is like trying to get to Farouk's body.
Farouk trying to find his body, and Division 3 trying to stop him finding his body, but David trying to...
First trying to stop him, and then try to help him, yeah, and then try to stop him again. So yeah, he's a little conflicted throughout this season. After David meets with Farouk at that booth in their minds, they go out to the actual location out in the middle of the desert, and they find the booth still there, but instead of that like crystal ball thing that was there, there's Sid's music box from like when she was a child, and she doesn't really like that. She's a little uncomfortable seeing that again. This was actually just a diversion because Oliver, who's still possessed by Lenny slash Farouk slash the Shadow King, whatever you want to call him, Oliver's still possessed, is actually now at the Division 3 headquarters and is just like ripping through everyone because he's trying to get something very specific. This is, I think, where female Carrie tries to fight Oliver, right? And then doesn't male Carrie end up inside of female Carrie, like partially?
He does something to her. He does something to her where they kind of switch.
Right,
And
right.
so Carrie ends up inside Carrie the wrong way, and his arm is like sticking out from her torso. Super creepy. And it's weird. And then he gets actually stuck in there for a little while. And I think they eventually end up getting him out, but then they're kind of afraid to go back together.
Almost feel like it just doesn't work the same way anymore.
I know. And so Carrie starts spending a lot more time outside of Carrie, and she starts learning things like how to eat, how to use the restroom, and she hates all that stuff. But she likes cream soda.
Because she's just like, this eating thing is so stupid.
I know.
And then he's all trying to help her. He's like, do you need help wiping? And she's like, no, I got it. And throughout season 2, I don't know if you guys noticed this as well, but they changed shapes now. So instead of showing a bunch of circles, this season has a shit ton of hexagons.
Oh yeah, because all of Division 3.
Their whole thing looks like a fucking beehive.
Yeah, and their windows are all hexagons and
with like hexagon tint on the hexagon windows. But it's only in Division 3. So I don't know, that's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Even in the like their lab area, they have this light overhead that's a hexagon. But yeah, so he meets with future Sid looking for more answers, and she reveals that there is this impending doom that's coming, but she doesn't really give him much else to go off of because of the fact that she doesn't want to scare him into changing the future, right? The reality of the fact is he's the issue.
Yeah.
And then David has a mental conference call with Amal Farouk after that. The Shadow King is now in his true mental form, I guess you could say. That's when you see the suave actor. And yeah, fantastic acting. What I liked about this episode is this is where they're kind of like flexing on each other with their mental muscle. So it's a cool display of mental warfare where you see them kind of like using different like techniques of fighting each other. So David does that like wrestling match type thing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is how you want to fight me, is like in this wrestling match. No, let's up the ante a little bit. And so he like busts out with like a samurai sword, and then so David fucking like turns into a tank and tries to like shoot him as a tank. And so I don't know, they just keep like going back and forth and one-upping each other. But this really impressed Farouk. Like, I think he's seen how much David has grown in a short amount of time.
That's true.
After they are done flexing on each other, David basically just tells him like, hey, you cannot be going around killing people. All right. So if I'm going to help you find your body, you need to stop killing people. So he's like, all right. I guess I'll stop, as much as I don't want to. So they have a gentleman's agreement, right?
Totally.
Male Carrie finally manages to exit female Carrie's body. It actually looks like female Carrie is starting to age a little bit now, because she gets like that strand of white hair, or like a chunk of white hair. David finally tells Sid about meeting the future self and helping Farouk. So at first she's just like, what the fuck's wrong with you? But, it starts to make sense to her as well. You got the next one?
I just wanted to mention a couple things as we go through the season. In chapter 12, at the very end, Lenny returns,
Oh,
and you're just
shit.
like, what the hell? See, oh, and no, I want to go back. At chapter 11, you find out that you find out a lot of information, which I think is very important, but I don't want to go through like every little detail, but I just want to go through this real quick. Is that there is the Migo monks are the ones who buried Farouk's body, and so they're the only ones who know where Farouk's body is. Unfortunately, the Migo monks were wiped out by the Miser Sunday, and so there's only one Migo monk left, and that is who Farouk has been pursuing. And then you find out that it's actually the monk that has been spreading the catalyst and not Farouk. And so after the monk dies, everyone who had the catalyst snaps out of it. And the way they put it is they have 300 people that want to use the bathroom at one time. They find Lenny, and she's in a body, and she's back, with one huge difference, that her eyes are blue. And then I think in the next episode, chapter 13,
that's the one I have.
Okay, so that's when you find out exactly where Lenny got her body,
yeah.
which is
this is the one that you scarred your son with, and I got a lot to say about this one.
Poor Julian.
All right, so I'm back up. Season 2, episode 5, chapter 13, lucky number 13. So Amal Farouk with Oliver. So I don't know, they're kind of like side by side now, right? So it's like Farouk just kind of chills outside of Oliver's body, even though he's still controlling him. They're looking for a body, but you just assume that they're looking for Farouk's body, and they find this body in the middle of the desert, but it's not what you would expect, because it looks to be a female body. And so they take a little tissue sample, and you're like, okay, the fuck was that?
And that is with the instrument that they broke into Division 3 to steal.
Right. So when they're vaporizing people initially, they broke in to steal this like gun looking thing, whatever the fuck that does. And we'll find out soon enough. Like you said, Lenny is now in Division 3, and she's kind of locked in this upside down room thing, which is
so weird.
Pretty cool. But yeah, she's locked in there, and looking a little different with the lighter eyes. She's like being interrogated by a few different people, right? Like, doesn't Clark go in there at some point and he's kind of asking her questions? Amy is at an undisclosed location and is actually found by Oliver. He states that he's going to actually take her to David. And I don't know, she's feeling a little uneasy about this, though. She's like, I don't know if I trust this guy. He seems nice, but I don't know, something odd about him. While that's happening, David visits Lenny, and he's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, like what the hell happened to her, and why is she back when her body was destroyed and placed in that wall. And so he's like, there's no way that you could have came back with your original body, so whose body is this?
I wouldn't say there's no way in this show, to be honest.
I liked the way that they were telling this story, because as they were revealing what happened to the audience, David was finding out by going into Lenny's mind in this new body. What was actually happening was that as he enters her mind, he discovers that Farouk in Oliver's body kills Amy and infuses the tissue sample, which has the DNA of Lenny's body, and uses the gun to kind of fuse that with Amy's and turn Amy into Lenny. This was a fucking trippy ass episode just because of that, because he sacrifices Amy to bring Lenny back.
So there's a whole lot of screaming in this episode.
And this was freaking unsettling with that music. The music was dope for this scene too. I loved just the whole atmosphere of it, and it's like how it's like flashing, and then Oliver's just standing over the body with the gun, right? Like infusing the DNA together. And then Farouk is like outside of Oliver's body, but he's like standing behind this like little bead curtain thing and looking all like menacing with his shades on and shit. And plan on using that for the teaser for this episode.
Oh, nice.
But as the audience finds out, you know, this whole revelation, David is also finding out, and so he's devastated by the news, and he, you know, he's like trying to like escape the room, and he's like all crying, and Lenny goes to comfort him and everything. But it's kind of creepy because it's like now when he looks into her eyes, he sees Amy, but it's like everything else looks like Lenny. And that's when he vows to stop helping Farouk, and he's like, fuck that fool, I'm gonna kill his ass now. You know, he
Yeah.
killed Amy, so I'm coming for him. And that was the end of the episode. We are now at the season finale. So this is season 2, episode 11, chapter 19. After Farouk finally reunited with his physical body in the last episode, he and David engage in some sort of like anime-like mental battle, but this time it's a little bit more intense, very colorful.
Yeah, this is a really cool way to showcase a mental altercation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because this is like the final battle, and it's happening at the beginning of the episode, and it doesn't last very long.
No, yeah, and it's a lot different than their first engagement, right? Where Farouk was just kind of like he was just kind of like rolling with the punches. So I don't think he was really trying to fight David. He was just letting David like unload that clip, you know, and then he's just kind of like dodging the bullets and just laughing at him like, oh, you know, like we got pretty powerful. But this time they're actually just kind of like clashing with each other, but it's a stalemate from what it looks like. And then Farouk actually begins to overpower David until Lenny, armed with a sniper rifle, shoots the choke device, which is, I don't know where the hell they got this thing from, but the way that the choke works, it kind of looks like a little like Y looking thing.
It's a tuning fork.
Oh, is that what that is? I had no idea what the hell that thing was.
That's exactly, it's a giant tuning fork, and that's exactly how you use a tuning fork, is you hit it and it emits a sound, and you're supposed to match your note to that.
I wonder if Farouk was unable to destroy it because he sees it and I think he knows what it does.
He just
But
throws it.
he just tosses it.
But then it ends up lodging itself into the ground so perfectly. But I love how all the plans came together, the way David had like implanted all the plans into people's memories for them to come out at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And he was doing that so that way if the plan was compromised by one person, they wouldn't get the full plan, right?
Yeah, because like Clark gets compromised.
Right. Exactly.
And this is, I mean, obviously David's making a lot of choices that condemn himself, but this is definitely where Sid starts veering off, I think.
I don't know. I wasn't really feeling this because I was like, is she really that gullible? She's just looking at just like very out of context moments, and she's just like, oh man, what the hell happened to David? I was just like, nah, or whatever.
I know. It was, well, I guess that just, I don't know, I guess that just goes to show that how messed up they both are, you know? I mean, obviously we know that David is very unstable, but we forget she's also super unstable herself, and they probably weren't exactly a right fit together, at least not in this life. And they both veer off and just kind of both become like horrible people.
Were you guys feeling like when you were first watching season 2, where you're like, what the fuck did they do to their relationship? Because it felt odd, right? Like it felt uncomfortable. They were distant from each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were apart for a year, and then they were still trying to be together or whatever, but
It was just different, right? The
yeah, it
dynamic
felt
was different.
forced. Yeah, definitely. I feel like him being away for a year, even though she knew that wasn't his fault, like I feel like she sort of subconsciously blamed him, you know, and
I think she did ask him. She was like, "So why'd you leave?" And he was like, "You fucking saw me. I got abducted. Like
by
what
you.
the fuck?" Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
they definitely have a lot of baggage. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, so the choke is activated, everyone loses their powers, and David just starts wailing on Farouk.
David now anticipating the effects of the choke. And I think Amal is still kind of like disoriented from the effects of the choke. So David, like gets on him and just starts like beating the shit out of him, taking out all of his frustrations for ruining his life, robbing him from a like the childhood that he wished he had.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're essentially both humans at this time, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, well, this is the point where Future Sid told David that he killed Farouk, that he bashed his brains in, or whatever she said. Um, so he's doing the brain bashing, and then Sid comes in and stops him, which
Yeah,
changes that branch of the future
that's
for
wild,
sure.
huh? Because she shows up and she's pointing the gun at David, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I finally see you for who you really are. You've been the villain all along, and I'm not gonna let you win." And so he's like, "What the fuck? Like what's going on? Like they gotten to you?"
And then I think she reveals to David at that point that he's the one who ends the world later. She's pretty set on changing that, and actually pulls the trigger.
Dang, I didn't think she would do it.
I know, but at that same time, uh, Lenny pulls the trigger and shoots her bullet. It seems like she's actually aiming
She
for.
was.
Yeah, she was aiming.
She's a bad shot.
Yeah, totally aiming for Sid, but shot the bullet out of the air instead.
Worked out even better.
Kind of knocked both of them back, right?
Mm-hmm.
David comes to and his powers are back, but Sid's still knocked out. So he alters her memory, which she never forgives, ever, ever.
Yeah, because it's like, who is he to like erase her memories?
To change her opinion. Yeah, even if her opinion of him isn't accurate or isn't true or whatever, he still can't do that to her
Yeah, he just
against
takes
her
it upon
will,
himself to do it
Uh,
while she's unconscious.
exactly. And so then later on, not that far in, later on, they're back at Division 3, and he comes to her. They have a chat about running away and this and that right after the trial, and then they have mental sex, which is basically also rape, because her memory is altered, and she wouldn't have normally. She doesn't feel like that for him anymore. So he's kind of forcing it on her.
Mm-hmm.
And she does mention that later when they have their, what Carrie called an intervention, which was supposed to be Farouk's trial, but turned into David's intervention, that she considers it sexual assault.
Oh, straight up. So it's like, how easily could he just like wipe people's minds, or just like make people fall in love with them, and then he's like, I can have sex with anyone I want because I can just like make
Yeah.
them fall in love with me.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, but then like I mentioned, he goes to what he thinks is Farouk's trial and gets locked into this electric cage thing.
That was cool. I like the swerve at the end.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But where it basically turns into an intervention, and they're all telling him about, like future crimes that he's going to commit and how he's supposed to end the world.
Damn, this was wild because they had him trapped, and it seemed like he wasn't going to be able to get out until he did.
Yeah.
And that shows you how strong he is, because he can straight just brute force his way out of shit.
Well, that was thanks to Farouk, because Farouk at one point told him, you make the reality, and basically David continues to make his own reality after, forevermore after that. And so that was just one of many examples of him making his reality. He's like, you know what, I'm not in this cage anymore, and then he's not.
This is a huge turning point in the story, because like he had created that one personality earlier. I don't know when exactly like the others popped up, but they're like here, they're present now, and they're kind of like the
Yeah,
devil's on his shoulder now that Farouk's out of there. He has these like two other personalities that he kind of like talks to in his mind. They're like, see, like we told you, we try to tell you, you got to listen to us. And he makes the conscious decision right here and now, because he feels so betrayed by everyone, that he's just like, fuck everyone, I'm going into business for myself. And that's when he breaks out. So after he breaks out, he before fleeing Division 3, he actually teleports to Lenny's cell because she was going to be trialed next, and he frees her, and he's like, let's go. And she was like, well, what about Blondie? And he's like, there ain't no Blondie, no mo.
That's right.
Damn,
No
damn.
mo. And then they
And they vanish.
teleport out together.
Ooh, man, that was a fucking dope season
I
finale.
know. And then I think she does imply, like in the next season, yeah, because yeah, she does get jealous, like when Switch comes, and she's like, just so you know, you can't do anything with him. He's mine, you know. So
A little
yeah, she's like,
possessive, yeah.
yeah, she gets a little possessive.
Also because he's kind of her keys to the kingdom, right? Because she can have whatever she wants just as long as he gets what he wants. So she's keeping him
Yeah,
around because she's benefiting off of that.
that's true.
So I had a couple takeaways from season 2. I actually felt like season 2 was a little bit of a step down from season 1.
A little bit.
A slight step down. I felt like a lot of it was like chasing the body and this and that, and there were some throwaway episodes. I'm like, I don't really fucking care what's
Yeah,
going on here. But man, that season finale was fucking awesome. I love that.
yeah.
I did also feel like several characters became pretty significantly less interesting in season 2 as opposed to season 1. So Melanie is a lot less interesting. She
Autonomy.
doesn't fucking do much of anything. Patonomy fucking dies and is like hooked up to the mainframe. He actually becomes interesting again in season 3, but like he
Yeah,
doesn't do shit in season 2.
yeah,
That was a cool little swerve, though. I will admit, because it's like this
Oh,
entire time we think like, of course, Farouk is going to be the evil one. He's going to be the Doombringer, right? But then it's like, no, actually, it's David. David is the walking weapon.
right. You know, we saw David as the victim. David was the one who was mistreated all his life by Farouk all along, and then all of a sudden the tables turn. And anyway, I don't know. I think that's an interesting analogy there. Just how, again, everything comes back to like the whole mental health thing, and I just see
right.
that as that's interesting. Like, um, though others may have caused him to be that way, or others, as in Amal Farouk, he's still responsible for his behavior now, and so although we want him to be the hero, yeah, ironically, yeah, there are things, some movies that do that where they do a switcheroo. I think I've told you about it. I don't want to mention it here because I don't give any spoilers for that one just yet. But uh yeah, I think that's it's hard to do that where you switch the antagonist and the protagonist. And I love how in this show they never really make it clear once they get to this
Oh
point.
yeah, yeah,
It's just this kind of
exactly.
this
And
tug of
then
war
yeah, and
out
it
of my
continues
heart.
to be unclear through the whole third season, right?
Right,
Um,
exactly. We want closure. We want something like, David, be good again, and you're like,
well, I think we get that closure, in my opinion, sort of.
yeah,
It was kind of cool that we just this entire time we thought that David was the reluctant hero, and he ended up being the anti-villain by the end of season 2.
Hmm.
Because he's not a prototypical villain. You know, he's actually kind of a likable villain.
Hmm.
hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Instead of an anti-hero, he's an anti-villain.
So I was a little confused on like how they were explaining Delusion, and I was just curious, like how do you guys compare Illusion to Delusion? Like, what's the big difference there?
I think maybe that delusion is damaging.
There's a negative connotation associated, but also I think a delusion is typically like, you're delusional, somebody will say, right? No one would say you're illusional. You're delusional, meaning you're doing it to yourself. So that, whereas an illusion can be something outside of you, a mirage is an illusion. Oh my gosh, or a sleight of hand in a magician, right? It's outside of you, whereas a delusion is something that's coming inside you. It's you perceiving something, and however you're putting it together, it's not reality.
But is it possible that like the delusion could cause illusions?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Especially
Probably.
if you're, have multiple personalities and
Or can an illusion cause a delusion? You know what I mean?
oh,
Probably.
yeah, that's
That's
a
why I
good
was a little
question.
torn on the definitions and how they used them in season 2, because I'm just like, I was like, is it? I don't know. Like, is this really a delusion? All right, so we jumping into season 3, the final season.
Yes.
So Michael and I actually picked all 3 of the same episodes for season 3, 1, 4, and 8. And Steph, are you just gonna kind of like, no, throw in some comments as you see fit?
Yeah, because I feel like I couldn't just pick specific episodes because something, at least one thing significant happened in every episode. You know, I mean, it's the last season. They knew it was going to be the last season, so they went big. They did not go home.
Hmm.
You know, since Michael and I both chose episode 1, let's get right into it. The season premiere. And man, I just thought this was such a dope episode. And honestly, it may possibly be one of my favorite episodes in the entire series. So
Like,
in this
I might
one,
agree.
we follow a young girl named Jia Yi who listens to audio lessons about time travel and begins to see kind of strange references throughout the city that she's in. And there's actually this ad that she kind of like randomly sees, and it's looking for specifically a time traveler. So I think it's starting to give you this background on who this girl is, because she's listening to these lessons about time travel, and there's these ads that are asking for a time traveler. So you start to get the sense that, okay, maybe she can manipulate time in some way. Oh, beautiful actress, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I recognized her. I had to look her up, but I like how she had to solve that mystery. It was a puzzle that she had to solve. You know, you couldn't join the club unless you could find the club, and she found the
If
club.
you're worthy.
Yeah, you had to be worthy, so you had to be able to decipher those clues and solve these puzzles and stuff. And obviously, it actually took a little bit of using her time travel skill to actually solve the puzzle. So maybe you couldn't solve the puzzle without being a time traveler. So
Right.
there she was.
That's cool. Yeah, because she kept missing it, so she had to keep rewinding over and over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she would rewind and she would, slow down the audio or whatever in the on that radio,
Hmm.
and so she was able to find the whole message and figure out where to go. And once she gets there, I feel like this is my favorite part. Once she gets there, she's met with this, weird, I don't know, mobile dry cleaning situation in this white
Like a
room.
clothing store or some shit, like a pop-up clothing
Yeah.
store.
So, but the fun thing for me was that at the end, she goes through this tunnel, and she's going through this tunnel for who knows how long, and going who knows where in this tunnel. I loved the tunnel. I would never want to be in the tunnel because I feel like I would get claustrophobic or something. But it was a cool tunnel.
It's like a time and space defying tunnel. It's
Yeah,
really weird. Like
definitely.
she travels great distances in a short span of time through this like weird like VPN through reality or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I thought it. I don't know if this is interesting to anybody else. Probably just me, since we have that background. But that she kept switching between Mandarin and Japanese.
Yeah, I
So
thought
I'm
that was
assuming
interesting too.
that her character was half Chinese, half Japanese.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because I noticed her name, Jia Yi, and I was like, that's not Japanese. That sounds Chinese. And then the fact that she was speaking Mandarin and Japanese, so that kind of threw me off.
And so, in a spoiler, you find out later that the time travel instructional recording that she's listened to is her dad, and that's all in Mandarin.
Ah.
I forgot. I wanted to note that for Eric and I, this is the first time we've seen. This is the first time you've seen any of the show, but for me, I saw season 1 and 2, around the time they came out, but I never actually got a chance to see season 3
Right.
until
Right.
watching it for this podcast. So I really really enjoyed it. I thought it was so interesting, so weird, so good, and seeing David as the villain was really interesting also.
And a hippie.
And a
The and
hippie.
I always have kind of trouble
A levitating hippie.
figuring out when this show takes place, because in the first couple seasons it seems kind of 60s-y, the style is kind of
Mm-hmm.
60s and
Mm-hmm.
all that. But then in this
Right.
season, you see Switch with she has these really modern looking headphones on, and then also a
Mm-hmm.
cassette tape player, and both of those are way after
They're kind of
80s.
contradictory
Yeah.
in a way.
Right. I like how the showrunners did that though.
Probably on purpose. Yeah, it kind of makes the timeline a little ambiguous, I guess.
Oh, I was asking Michael about that. I think a couple weeks back. I was just like, "So, does this take place in the
Yeah.
60s or 70s?" And you were looking that up, right, Michael? You're saying like they purposefully did that.
They did. Yeah, they didn't want it to be like in any particular period per se. It was like they just want to fuck with us a little bit.
I guess.
It's almost like just doing what we like, you know? They're just like, oh, we're going to do what we like.
Random thought. Do you think as a time traveler you could keep yourself young forever? Like you can just let time around you pass, but like you can like freeze your body's aging?
That's a good question.
That'd be kind of
I have
cool.
no idea. I'm not a time traveler. I wouldn't know.
Just stay in your prime forever.
I know,
That'd be
that would
dope.
be cool.
Does time, I guess that does time have an effect on your body? If you're traveling through time still, does time still have
does
an
it still
effect?
age
Yeah,
at a normal rate type of thing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I mean they go back in time a few times and it does take a toll on her body as we're going to find out. Yeah.
Right.
So where does this passageway lead? Where does Yi end up?
She comes out in like a living room kind of situation.
At the compound. Yeah. Their little like hippie hideout.
Yes. Okay.
The house is in an undisclosed location in a city. It doesn't, I mean, we don't really know what city, I guess. But,
Yeah.
she ends up inside and everyone's doing drugs.
So is this like a commune or is it a cult or like what is
cult.
this?
It is absolutely a cult.
Yeah.
110%. A cult
the cult of David.
Full of a bunch of people that call David daddy.
This is a fucking Manson family that he created.
Yeah.
Seriously. And God, it's so weird. But they're all doing his drug that makes them all happy. And the drug is blue, as we've seen throughout all 3 seasons. Except for when David is angry, then it turns red. Lenny's there leading the whole thing. She's the breakfast queen.
Which is that literal or is that metaphorical?
I think it has something to do with, when she used to be, because her old friend is there too. Remember in the 2nd season when she gets Amy's body and then she goes to her old house and then, parties it up for a day or whatever. She meets up with,
right.
Those are the same people in the cult too.
Oh.
Salmon.
Yeah, Salmon, her new wife or whatever.
That's also funny too because some of the clues that help Ji make it there and find that tunnel is that they follow the sign that looks like the pregnant virgin or something like that. And so that's actually Salmon,
who was impregnated by Lenny. However, that happened.
Is that what happened? Because I don't think they ever explain that, do they?
No, they didn't explain it. But after Lenny's night of partying and she ends up
they bone.
In the bedroom with Salmon. At some point, right at the end, after Lenny has her conversation with Amy, her mental conversation or whatever, Salmon comes out of the bathroom and she's like touching her stomach and she's like, "We're having a little prince" or whatever.
I thought she was just joking.
Yeah, no, she was.
I thought she was just being a druggie, saying random
shit.
Nah.
No, she was serious.
So my thing is, why introduce this split personality for Lenny by having Amy be in her body? Well, I guess they're sharing the body, but like they never really revisit that.
I'm trying to remember if she ever comes out, because I was kind of thinking that was like a guilt thing. Like I don't think it was another personality. It was just kind of her talking to herself, sort of thing. Or there's a remnant of Amy left in there, which eventually got squashed down.
I thought that would have been kind of cool, that something similar that like maybe she could sympathize with David on, is that she's like, now I got split personalities. I got Amy in here. And they should have leaned into that. I thought that would have been a cool dynamic. Amy is still here with us and maybe we can channel her type of thing.
Yeah, maybe they didn't want to take too much away from the main story, because that would have been interesting in and of itself for sure. I'd have been like, whoa, because it was heartbreaking.
So Lenny, her role in this tribe, she's kind of like the right-hand man to David, right? Like she kind of manages the day-to-day.
Like you have to convince her before you can see the king.
She meets up with Switch, right? And so she's kind of showing her around, and that's eventually where someone gives her the nickname Switch, Ji.
Yeah.
Eventually she's led to David, I have a feeling that Switch is kind of, she's just fascinated by David before she even meets him. She knows anything about him. I don't even think she's really heard much about him. She just kind of envisions him as some sort of like higher being type of thing.
I mean, she went through a lot to find him, all the clues and the puzzles and stuff. So I feel like, yeah, after all of that, she's like, I need to meet this guy, right?
I feel like she was kind of expecting Dr. Manhattan in some way, but it's just like, oh, I mean, that's kind of cool. Like you look like a regular human, but you're this like really powerful person.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get to see how David is, which is like a big contrast to how he was in the other 2 seasons. Just chill, mellow guy now, and he doesn't really fit the mold of a villain. You know, it's kind of confusing in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely chill and mellow, like you mentioned.
He's really zen.
It seems like he has his own little kind of house. He's in this cave thing.
That is a dope hideout, by the way.
Super dope.
I love that setting.
Mm-hmm.
He's in like this cave thing, and in the cave he has his own little house. And in that little house, in the cave, which is in the house, are all his personalities, or at least the ones that are out at the time, I guess.
And it seems like they're multiplying. Like there are a lot more from season 2 to 3.
Oh, definitely.
Mhm.
And they argue with each other, and I don't know, just generally hang out. But yeah, I mean, you get to see a little bit more of, I wouldn't necessarily say the Legion of the comics, but closer to it, because
Much
you
closer.
see more of his personalities, and he has a lot of personalities in the comics. But we do get to see Switch use her time travel powers a couple times, because Division 3 shows up and kills David a few times. And so
Not
we
just
get
anyone.
to see, yeah,
This was kind of dark humor. He gets his arm cut off by female Carrie, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, did that really just
right.
happen?
And at some point, he just like is vaporizing his old friends,
Right,
like
yeah.
vaporize Carrie, vaporize, you know.
He never vaporizes Sid, but he's just taking D3 members out left and right.
Yeah.
But it's like
And
seeing
then
this powerful person like David get caught off guard so many times. It's kind of interesting to think about, because you're like, how the fuck are they getting the jump on this fool? And we find out later on they have like devices that block his mental abilities or something like that.
they have the little halos that they wear.
Undoubtedly designed by Mel Carey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you get to see Switch's powers, how they work. So
So
she
cool.
creates a door in the air, and then she goes through the door, and she's in a time hallway. And if you go forward, that's the future. But if you go back, and there's just a bunch of doors, and
Mhm.
you know, as she walks by, the doors have different increments of time. So like going back 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours.
It's kind of futuristic looking too, like a spaceship or something.
Yeah,
Right.
it's interesting. It's very
Right.
sci-fi. But then the further back she looks, like she doesn't actually go that far, but she kind of looks down the hall, and it's kind of dark, and you
Creepy.
hear creepy giggling.
Mm-hmm. The slow reveal, because you're thinking like, I wonder what's down there. Like, what the fuck is that?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're so creepy. I think they're up there with the weeping angels of Doctor Who. They're statues, and they look like, you know, like I guess common weeping angel statues that are covering their faces that you would see in cemeteries, right? So they look like angels. They're covering their faces with their hands. But the reason for that is because as long as anybody is viewing them, they don't exist. They only exist when they're not being viewed. So if you close your eyes and you open them, all of a sudden they're like in your face.
Oh hell no.
So anywho, carrying on.
Switch is she keeps trying to go back in time to save David, but David he's not acting fast enough. So Division 3 almost get to Switch, so she's like, all right, I gotta just go back further. And so when she goes back in time again, she actually runs into Farouk in the astral plane. Like he intercepts her signal somehow. And so he's trying to get to know her, because he never knew she existed. So he's just like, oh, what's your name is, girl? He's trying to get to know Switch, because I think that's what I like about him, is that when he sees a powerful mutant, he wants to get to know them, because it's like if he understands them, then he knows kind of like what they're capable of and how to deal with them, right? So he's almost like doing homework for himself.
Right.
So he's like, all right, let's see
Yeah.
how powerful she is. What can she do? And so obviously she can manipulate time in some way, which he can also do. He was trying to recruit her to Division 3, and she's just like, nah, I'm good, and slips away before he can like really stop her.
Through the tea tray,
Yeah,
which was clever. And he was like, damn, she's good.
she's crafty.
And Farouk, of course, is as smooth as ever.
Of course, always.
Yeah, of course. Charming.
After Switch escapes, Farouk, he hops out of the astral plane, and he is now in the new Division 3 facility, which is a damn flying fortress.
Right?
They've moved up in the world.
Mm-hmm. They have the funding.
Farouk informs the team that David is now working with a time traveler and that she must also be killed in order to reach David because together they're going to be super powerful. So now we know where Farouk stands with her.
Yeah.
What I also liked about this episode is that Mel Carey, he creates the android version, right, of Patanomy. So he's kind of putting his technical abilities to work.
Mainframe autonomy.
Right,
And he becomes,
exactly.
of course, the new Fukuyama.
He's basically a cyborg. Like, I don't even think there's any of the old Patanomy left. It's just kind of
just his mainframe brain. I mean,
Right,
whatever
yeah.
they uploaded, whatever of him that was uploaded into the mainframe, plus all of the rest of the mainframe is basically Patanomy now. And the Vermilion kind of report to him now instead of Fukuyama, right? Who knows whatever happened to that guy, actually.
Are we still kind of strangely attracted to the Vermilion?
Can't stop, won't stop.
So confused.
So confused.
Division 3 locate David's compound and are setting up for the raid. However, David actually relocates the entire compound away from them, so he just leaves behind a giant crater.
Mm-hmm.
Back to square one.
Back to the drawing board. Yeah.
Who knows where they are now? Just picks up the house and then moves it. That's how powerful he is. And so that was episode 1, and what an episode it was. I thought it was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great return.
Do you have anything before we get into episode 4 stuff? Did you want to kind of touch on a couple things in between?
Yeah, probably. Let me get back to my list. So that was episode 1. In episode 3, we start seeing. Which one are we jumping to? 4, you said?
Michael and I chose 1, 4, and 8.
Okay. I just wanted to mention in episode 3, we start seeing a little bit of Charles Xavier and Gabrielle Haller, David's mom and dad, obviously. And we see a little bit of them, how they met, and how it kind of mirrors David's life, and we get to see a little bit of baby David.
Because this is the big reveal of who David's father is, and so he ends up being the Charles Xavier.
Yes, he is the Charles Xavier. Now we know for sure, if we didn't figure out from Googling before, that David Haller's dad is Charles Xavier.
Yeah, mind blown.
AKA Professor X.
That's fucking wild.
Right?
This is fucking Professor X's son.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on top of that, what's also crazy is that this actor that they chose, he kind of looks like James McAvoy, like that version of Professor X.
A little bit.
Yeah.
He kind of has like similar mannerisms.
Yeah. But at the same time, not enough where it kind of keeps, I feel like it keeps the show a little bit separated from the rest of the MCU, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Not even just a little bit, a lot, right? And yeah, we get to see a little bit of him building his first Cerebro. No relation to the Cerebro that ends up in the movies or the kind of mini Cerebro that David uses in season 2.
That's why it was so cool for me specifically, because when I saw the little sensory deprivation pod thing that David was using, I was like, oh, that's kind of like his version of Cerebro. That's kind of cool. And then like that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
We find out that Charles was also kind of fucking around with trying to amplify his powers by building an early prototype of Cerebro.
Yeah. So, I mean, we mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. We see a kind of a switch between David and Farouk. Now, Farouk is less of a villain. I wouldn't say he's, a good guy per se, but he's definitely less of the villain, and David is the villain, right?
You don't fully trust Farouk either. Yeah.
Right.
I thought it was super duper interesting how you get to see kind of Farouk's point of view of him taking over David. To Farouk, he loved David and considers David like his son, even though David spent his whole life feeling like Farouk was an invasive parasite,
Just fucking with him, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, that's we saw that with the yellow-eyed demon, we saw that with the creepy angry boy, all the scary manifestations. But yeah, I thought
Oh,
it was super
Rain.
interesting to see how he loved David and David was like his son.
Also, with that, it's hard to take his actual word for it because you don't know if he's
Right.
just trying to manipulate you. This is a master manipulator.
It's true, but I believed him on that one. I don't know why, but I did.
I think the protagonist also wanted to believe him, but also at the same time, you kind of like keep your guard up a little bit because this guy is pretty crafty himself.
He's pretty slippery, this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 23, episode 4.
Are we moving on?
I thought you just wanted me to mention the few things. Oh, sorry. Episode 4 was the one you guys had. Okay.
I was already talking about how in season 2 I felt like a lot of characters took a back seat. I felt like Lenny was fucking amazing in season 1, kind of lame in season 2, but you know what, ladies and gentlemen, Aubrey Plaza is fucking back and she's killing it in season 3. And I just love this new side of her because she's also kind of coming into her own as well. She's actually almost like becoming more normal than David.
Right. Yeah,
And even she's
definitely.
kind of getting to be like, David's a little crazy.
How wild is that?
Yeah.
This is an unhinged person, and now she's like, "You're a little too crazy for me. You need to tone that down."
Right?
I wonder though if the reason why she's become more human is because she has Amy inside her, the whatever remnants of Amy is inside her still. How that plays a role if she actually was crazy back at Clockworks. What's interesting to me is her development over the course of the show, because yeah, she's like this crazy, I don't know, she showed a lot of range, I think, in this entire show, which so she's
Definitely.
wild in the first season, and then a lot more uh contemplative and sort of just like she's processing what's happened to her while she was lost in this world with Farouk, and then all of a sudden she gets in Amy's body, and then it's just dealing with the ramifications of this having happened and her own kind of participation in killing Amy. So I think that this only showcases, the second season only allow, like, created like almost like a canvas for her to then paint this next portion of who she is in the show.
Her character goes through a hell of an arc in and of itself, right? Like, she goes through some shit, and it's pretty fucked up. A lot of it was not her fault either. She was just kind of thrust into it. She was almost like guilty by association to David.
Exactly.
Yeah, she was collateral damage, but she was trying to actually do better for herself. She was trying to actually crawl out of this hole, actually start her life. I think that's how she was kind of describing it. She was saying that she was wasting so much time doing drugs and this and that and just not giving a fuck. But she finally found the meaning to what life is, and it's like she found her own purpose in life. I think that's probably why she was doing all these drugs, is because she was just drifting through her life without any sort of direction, and she finally found something she could start focusing all of her attention on. So instead of putting all of her effort into getting the next high, now maybe I want to be a parent. That could be kind of cool. That's like her the next step in her character arc,
Which happens very quickly.
Oh, it does. Oh my gosh.
This kind of goes along with the editing that they used in season 1, where Ptonomy was scrubbing through someone's memory and he sees like a little blip and he's like, what the fuck is that? And so he's like rewinding it. So I love the editing in this episode because Ptonomy, which is like an android now, he starts experiencing some data loss to the mainframe. And also, I just realized this, Ptonomy is almost like a physical representation of like the normal timeline. He in some way he's connected to the timeline, and so when it starts to glitch, like he's also kind of glitching himself.
Yeah.
So he's explaining, in simple terms to the audience as well as the protagonist, like, yeah, there's something fucked up with the timeline. The way that they show the glitch is that they keep repeating scenes back to back. in various situations throughout this episode. They do that on purpose. And I just thought that was a great, simple editing technique to represent something story related.
Right.
And so Sid is deducing that David is now working with the time traveler and going back in time, fucking with stuff. And that's what's resulting in this glitch.
Mm-hmm.
They actually watch some sort of surveillance footage, and that's when these creepy time creatures start like coming through.
Oh God, like ring status.
Yeah. So they at first we see them in that time hallway that Switch can jump to,
Mm-hmm.
but now they're like seeping into the real world. And so it's like Farouk actually has to come in and kill it before it reaches the rest of the protagonists.
Yeah, they're just kind of watching it, and they're like,
What
"Oh,
the
but it's
hell?
behind the screen. It's not gonna. There's nothing that can happen." And all of a sudden, it starts ringing through the screen.
Yeah. Michael and I were actually watching that not too long ago.
Yeah, the scene where she comes through.
Back to Lenny, she has to experience an entire lifetime, pretty much, in a very short amount of time. So, the demons they end up coming out and kind of
fucking with everyone,
and putting them. Yeah, they start messing with everyone. So it puts David back in a concentration camp with his mom, and it puts Sid face to face with a younger version of herself, and then Lenny experiences. And it seems like it's real because like Salmon disappears and then she's never seen again, right?
Yeah. What the hell happens to her?
It's like super speeds up time for her. Like it's not just like putting illusions in front of her or delusions in her. It just like super speeds up time just for her. And so she experiences the birth of her daughter and the entire life and death of her daughter all in a super short amount of time. And you know,
and
the last thing her daughter says, yeah. So she just wakes up, next to a pile of ash. And the last thing her daughter says before she dies is, "Thank you for always being there for me."
Like she had a choice.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm like, she doesn't even remember any of this. Like, she just experienced it in little blips. But I guess she was a good mom in between. It was heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking.
On top of that, that was the one thing that was starting to give her purpose in life, and that was immediately taken away.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was kind of what put everything into perspective for her, and that's when she kind of finally disassociates herself from David, I guess.
The shit that she's had to go through herself as well. I mean, she was killed. So she had to experience that, and then she had to experience like living in this weird state inside David, and then inside Farouk, and then in Amy's body, and then to add insult to injury, then to give her that purpose. So it's just heavy.
It's kind of weird that she is his rock.
Right.
Who the hell would have thought?
Right.
She keeps him grounded.
Oh yeah, and then I guess this makes this really symbolic that Lenny's like, "I'm done." She's like, "I'm done with you. I'm done with all of this," and she stabs herself in the neck and dies in front of David.
Damn.
That tether is literally cut, and so David can just all hell can break loose.
Spiral.
So I wanted to just touch on this scene really quick because I just thought it was kind of cool, and it shows how powerful he is too. So David is trapped in this kind of illusion, right, of being in a concentration camp, but then he realizes what's going on, so he breaks out of it, and so he knocks the two little time demons back, and so he's trying to like confront them, but they keep like resetting time, and that's doing their little giggle.
He keeps walking up to them over and over,
and so you think that there's nothing that he can do until he realizes he's like, motherfucker, I'm a god.
Yeah.
That's when he does like the little like Gilgamesh like multiple arm thing, flips him off with all of them. He like incinerates one, and then he's just like, tell your friends, like don't fuck with me type of thing.
Yeah, at the end. I think one thing we forgot to mention is that at some point David kidnaps Carrie, and he's using him to enhance Switch's powers so that David can also go into the time hallway with Switch, which he couldn't do before. He tried to go into the hallway with Switch. He wasn't able to follow her. There's like a barrier. His goal is to go back in time and fix his relationship with Sid.
Damn. He still loves her. She may not love him the same, but he still loves her.
Carrie actually is able to break out of the whatever trance the time demons are putting everybody in. I'm only bringing this up just because I want to mention that they end up escaping through that tunnel. So they go back through the tunnel.
And so once Patami reboots, it kind of does a correction on the timeline. And so they end up just magically in the aircraft carrier again. They're like, what the fuck? Where are we?
Which is convenient.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's just like, it's cool like how tied Patami is to the timeline as a machine.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, and also the fact that since they essentially stole Mel Carey back, he just lost Lenny, and now he's just like, all right, well, I just need Carey's help so I can find Switch. Both of them are gone, and so he declares war on Division 3. Oh shit! All right, so that's the end of the episode. The last episode that Michael and I have is the series finale. So, Steph, go ahead and fill us in.
So we do experience in episode 6, chapter 25, the second life of Sid, which I thought was cute. It was definitely kind of fillery, but it was interesting at the same time because it does affect later, Sid's actions. We get a little bit of backstory, like him and Gabrielle ended up meeting in an asylum. I don't know why in the heck Charles was there, but Gabrielle was in a state, like a catatonic state from her experiences in a concentration camp. She was able to obviously escape and ends up I don't know, be released. I don't know, but she ends up in this asylum, and it's Charles that kind of actually breaks her out of this state, and then they end up breaking out of the asylum together, and they get a house and have a baby.
I like the way that they break out is because he's just like, hey, so just tell me when and you're not gonna get us out of here. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's just like, I'll show you. He tricks everyone to thinking that, it's a celebration. They're like, oh yeah, they're getting out. And so they actually applaud them on their way out. And I thought that was kind of
Yeah,
cool.
they hold the doors open for them and everything. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. But when they're in this house, Gabrielle, she had mental issues. You also see Charles making a prototype of Cerebro, and he's looking for somebody like him. He ends up finding Farouk. So he travels to Morocco to meet with Farouk, and during that time, Gabrielle is experiencing David trying to talk to her back in time, but for some reason, when they come back, he's not quite able to reach her. Switch's reach isn't quite that strong yet, and she feels like it's like a ghostly presence and it's driving her nuts. Another thing that she's experiencing is Farouk's presence once he is dead via Charles's hand, trying to come and take over her baby. And then the third thing she's experiencing in this house are the time demons. So a bunch of things making her feel like she's freaking crazy again. When he comes back to Gabrielle back in a state, like the catatonic kind of state again. And that is a little bit, I guess, of backstory that we get before everything in the final season or in the final episode. Is Switch finally able to succeed in this episode, or was it the next episode?
To go all the way back? Probably the penultimate episode because they're already in the past in that episode.
The cool thing is, I guess, they're able to. Switch is finally able to bring David back, and David actually ends up teaming up with Charles and takes Farouk by surprise by being an extra guest in the house. You find out a couple of things. Farouk is obviously still a villain back then, and so he's kind of has his castle and everything, and you find out that he's trapped the king inside a monkey and all his followers inside a child.
That is trippy.
Which is pretty brutal.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a punishment.
Exactly. And so that I think that's kind of when Charles is like, yeah, I need to get rid of this guy. Like, he's not like me.
Because the whole point of Charles even seeking Farouk out was because he's like, how exciting is it that I thought I was the only one like this in the world and that there's actually someone out there like me. I need to meet this guy. I want to see how he is. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and so David actually shows up and meets with his father and convinces him that he's there to help. And at the same time, Sid and who is it? Sid and the Careys?
Yes. Yeah, so Carrie's all fucked up now because he absorbed female Carrie's injuries.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So Sid and the Careys go back, and the door through time was still there, so they all jump through it. And of course they go through the moral conundrum of, should we kill baby David? And Sid's like, he hasn't done anything yet.
Is it moral to punish someone that hasn't done anything yet? But also at the same time, you know for a fact that they will be doing this because you have the evidence in front of you. So it's like that was kind of like the conundrum that they're running into.
Yeah.
Which episode are we on?
On the last one.
Oh, we're already on the finale?
Yeah.
Because this is where Michael and I are going to jump into.
We were kind of jumping around a little bit. So Sid and the Carries are in the past, David's in the past, and Farouk is in the past.
So now we're on season 3, episode 8, chapter 27, the series finale. Oh, I wanted to mention really quick that Harry Lloyd, the actor for Charles Xavier, is fucking Viserys Targaryen, bro.
Oh.
When I discovered that, I was like, why does he look so familiar? I looked him up and I was like, no fucking way. Just imagine him with the blonde wig. That's fucking Viserys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. Wow.
Damn.
Wow.
That was trippy for me to find out. If you don't care about Game of Thrones, then maybe not as much.
Obviously, we do here.
Did we lose Michael? You back?
Yeah, I'm back. It said experiencing, internet, blah, blah, blah.
I think David is going back in time again.
He doesn't like it. Yeah, he doesn't like us talking about.
If you hear ticking and see some yellow eyes, watch out.
Now everyone is so far back in time, and this is showing the true power of Switch, because David would not have been able to do this without Switch. But the thing is, it's taking a huge toll on Switch's body, because every time she goes back further than what her body can handle, she starts losing her teeth. They just start falling out. And so now she's like all crippled looking, and like all of her teeth are starting to fall out, and she's dying.
I think
like,
all of her teeth do fall out. She's like bleeding out of all her orifices, and she's just kind of laying there dying in the past.
It's kind of sad because David doesn't care about her. He's like, yeah, I got business I need to do.
Right.
Yeah. So she's kind of able to. It's interesting because she's kind of able to leave them in the past, it seems, and she flips through. Oh, is it because the time demons are coming or something? And so she kind of flips through the door. And I know she's in a bed. She's like on the bed dying, like in the house, and the time demons start coming for her. So she flips through the door and ends up in the hallway with the whole bed that she was laying on.
I didn't think that she could do that.
Right? Well, I don't know. I think her power kind of takes on a whole new level. And there in the timeline hallway, she dies.
That was a big moment because she's so weak at this point that she's just like, like, just take me. And so the time demons are like closing in on her. Much to her surprise, her dad shows up in that hallway. So apparently he has powers too.
And then she finds out, that she's some sort of, I don't think it was like a whole different like race of people, is it? But she's able to, I don't know, shed her earthly skin and become like this time god kind of situation.
I don't even think she could be considered a mutant. I think she might just be an entirely different being altogether.
Like the Phoenix.
Yeah. So her dad kind of shows her, that there is a lot less limitation to her powers at this point, and she's able to call off all the time demons because apparently they're like dogs, and she has a whistle for them and everything.
That is trippy.
She kind of helps Sid out.
Sid and female carrier are trying to protect the mom and baby David.
Yeah. And so they're all like fighting, and Charles is able to give some fatherly advice to David. He tells him, "Let me be your father. I don't get a chance to be your father. I don't know why I gave you up, but I never got a chance to be your father. So let me take that chance. Let me be your father."
Their mission was that David was teaming up with Charles to kill the past Farouk before he could turn into this like all-powerful being, right, that he has trouble dealing with.
Yeah.
Present day Farouk gets to past Farouk beforehand and lets him know, warns him, right? And so I think David tries to jump the gun and just go after past Farouk, but he's also not able to kill him either. They're kind of like going back and forth mentally.
Yeah.
And then that's where Charles pulls him out of it and is just like, stop, we're not doing this. While David was struggling with past Farouk, present Farouk lays it all out on the line for Charles. And he's just like, listen, this is what the situation is. You actually understand what it is I'm trying to do. And you'll see what David's trying to do. And so now Charles is also on Farouk's side and is against David in this mission. That was the whole situation where Charles does that heart to heart with David and is just like, Farouk wasn't the one that fucked up your life. I was the one that fucked up your life. I brought Farouk to you inadvertently, you know? I was being naive and I was being an idiot. I should have just stayed home. I don't even know what I was thinking coming here. And, you know, like I could have been there for you. I could have been there for your mom and we could have been a happy family. And I just need you to understand that I never stopped loving you.
Mm-hmm.
You may not believe me, but that's the truth. And that's kind of what David has been wanting this entire time. He's been trying to convince himself that he is worthy of love.
Yeah, exactly.
Charles confirmed it, that he's like, yeah, I do love you. You know, you're my son. And I'm so sorry for doing this to you.
Yeah, and at the same time, present Farouk goes to past Farouk. And, you know, past Farouk is kind of arrogant and power hungry and stuff, right? And so he shows past Farouk everything that's going to happen because of his actions.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, you know, he's crying and he's like, thank you. So in a sense, like he kind of gets fathered by present Farouk, right? The same way, like, let me show you, let me teach you a lesson kind of thing.
He basically gives him an ego death during this process.
Right, because he's all ego.
Yeah, seriously.
He gives him, it's this reality check and brings him back down to earth.
And then, yeah, and at the same time, Switch goes through her situation where, you know, she dies in the timeline, and her dad shows up and is like, "Yay, you can finally join me," instead of just being on, instead of them having like computer dinners together.
Which was weird because those dinners would be brief, and he would just be like, "Hey, so how's your day? Are you studying? All right, cool. Anyway, I'm done." And then like they just roll the TV away.
I'm a dip.
Apparently he didn't eat. You know, he would be like, "Oh, pass me the potatoes," and she would like pass the potatoes, and all of a sudden like potatoes would appear in his screen. So he just had like some potatoes off to the side that he just passed to himself.
Oh my god, they simulate their dinner.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So everyone's able to. Charles is indeed able to change David's mind, and Farouk changes Farouk's mind,
and they just squash their beef.
Right David and past Farouk are able to squash their beef.
So the agreement that they have is that Farouk, now that he was able to give his past self that ego death and do it in an early stage so that way he won't do these heinous acts later on, right? Now, all Farouk wants to do is just kind of like live in peace and be able to enjoy life on his own terms. And then David will get to enjoy his life with his parents.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's the thing that's fucked up about it is that since they make this agreement, they change their timeline. And that means that present day Farouk, present day David, present day Sid, they're all going to be non-existent.
Yeah.
Because that would have never happened.
It's kind of poetic because, you know, they understand that they're going to cease to exist. So David and Sid actually come back together one last time, standing over renewed Faroukless baby David.
Untainted.
Untainted, and they fade away together.
I do have a few things to say about this. I did think it was bittersweet to see them together again because this is like the normal David, not this like crazed David anymore, you know, and he's hopeful now, and you can always tell that he never stopped loving Sid. You know, he was still trying to correct things even when he was in his villainous state. But the thing is, like, the acts that he also did, those couldn't be forgotten.
There's no going back.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like, she couldn't forget that. That actually did happen.
You know, even if they didn't fade away, they were never going to be together. But they were able to kind of find some sort of closure for each other, I guess, before they faded away.
Yeah, even though it didn't really matter because it wasn't going to exist anyway. What were you going to say, Michael?
I was going to say, in some way, it's like they lived the full equivalent of what Lenny's daughter did. You know what I mean? Like, watching the whole show play out, they all needed to have been born at the time they were born, and all these things needed to play out the way they did in order for things to be fixed in the past.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then just let's start over again.
It's just sad because it's like you wanted them to at least kind of mend the relationship, but there's that irreparable damage.
Right. Bitterness.
They could never
Yeah.
be what they were before. They were happy for each other in some respect, right? Because he was like, aren't you kind of surprised that I'm here? And she's just like, no, And he's like, well, I'm surprised that you ended up helping me. And she's like, no, I didn't help you. I helped him, little baby David, which is going to be a
Yeah.
totally different person from you.
Yeah.
The fact that they were talking about how David is going to grow up in a nice, loving home, and he and Sid will never meet in the future. And like Sid
Oh
is
my
going to go
goodness.
on to do great things without David. And I was just like, like twisting that knife.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those situations like it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all, right?
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. Painful though it may be.
Yeah, the new timeline takes effect, and then next thing you know, present day Sid and David are no longer there. They're long gone, forgotten in time.
They fade
Mhm.
away.
Hopefully, little baby David will go on to not become evil in the future, and that's how the
Yeah.
show ends.
Hopefully.
It's hopeful, and I like
Mm,
that.
right.
I mean, we don't end up with the guy getting the girl or anything like that, but it is a
Right.
hopeful ending.
Which could be kind of cliche if you think about it.
Yeah.
So now that you had seen season 3 for the first time, Steph, how does that compare to the other 2 seasons?
I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to watch it again and see, catch the things that I might have missed the first time around, or even the second time around. I kind of want to watch the whole series again. It's only 27 episodes.
I was just thinking, like, I guess what makes it hopeful as well is that who better to handle the growing psychic abilities of a young boy than Charles?
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, having
Yeah.
his parent. Not only is he gonna grow up with in a loving household with his parents, but they'll understand, or at least his father will understand what he's going through and how to help him manage all that.
Because you can imagine that no one was there for Charles. He had to kind of figure this out on his own, and he probably went through some shit as well. So hopefully he can fix the generational trauma. Especially now,
Right.
I think he's going to put in a little extra effort because he knows that if he doesn't, David could potentially end the world. So he's like, I need to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That is a wrap on Legion. If you made it to the end of our podcast, then your life was just reset to do it all over again.
Yay.
Pow.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Any final thoughts or closing comments?
I'm glad I was able to see the third season finally, because I had been putting it off for a while, in favor of other shows that were higher on the priority list. But finally got to finish it. It was still really good. I really enjoyed it, and 10 out of 10 would do again.
Michael, did Easton end up finishing the show?
No,
Because
not yet. No.
I know that you were telling me that she loved season 1, but she was kind of iffy about season 2, and that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I thought season 1 was great. Season 2, it was fine. A little bit below season 1, but man, I loved season 3. I thought season 3 was the best one.
I loved all 3
I agree.
seasons, but I think that the second season was the weakest.
I don't think enough can be said about how amazing and original and unpredictable the visual effects were in the series.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
It was quite the ride, for sure.
It was so cool. Just like all the effects and editing and all that stuff combined together to achieve the narrative goal. Awesome. And they kind of represent that with the box art for each season because they're all kind of psychedelic. And the show it's a fucking
Yes.
acid trip, man, sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. With a heart of gold.
And even the music, it's odd and sometimes unsettling,
Oh, the
but
music.
it's kind of like electronic sounding.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially at the end of the when credits roll, the music that's playing then is always so interesting. I remember trying when it was coming out after each episode, I would try to like download the music for it, and I was like, I can't find it anywhere. It's like it was a nice little like like ambient song or whatever, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if by now it's out.
Like your Shazam wasn't picking it up.
Yeah, at the time it wouldn't. So that was frustrating because I was like, I just want to hear that again. Just remind me of this episode. And yeah, so good. I think it was probably one of the most touching scenes for me was when Farouk shows younger Farouk, what present day Farouk shows past Farouk, everything that's going to happen, everything that he does to David, and the things he says to him. They're not cruel, but he definitely points these things out as him being angry. Like, why so much anger? Just wow. Was I
Why is
that
that so
way? I mean,
petty?
just
Yeah.
petty, exactly, holding on to this grudge. So, but he had to go through it. Everybody needed each other. No, and I guess what I'm getting at is everybody needed to have gone through what they went through so that they could have a better past and therefore a better future. And Sid's attitude toward David was just so like, it was just so distasteful. It was really like a stiff arm. And as
Mm-hmm.
somebody who, as we watch the show develop and everything, you want this love story to work out. Guy gets the girl, but then just to have that last little like snub, those last few snubs of hers, she's trying to. It's as though she's trying to act ambivalent, but there's just this anger inside. Oh, I didn't help you. I helped him. It's just like, okay,
Right.
okay.
Like she was cementing the fact that like there's no going back.
There can never be an us.
Not in that reality.
It's done. It's buried. It's in the ground. Damn.
Not even Brute can find it.
I wanted to ask you guys, what the hell was the point of Clark's character?
Damn, I'm not sure.
David.
I just felt like there was no point in that character, honestly.
He was supposed to get stabbed in the face with a pen and burned very, very badly.
And then dropped in space.
And then dropped in space.
After his husband's memory was taken away altogether. I think I don't know, there's just another character that got a second chance.
Yeah, he missed most of season 1, right? Because he got burned, and then they brought him back for season 2 to not do a damn thing. And then in season 3, he does a tiny bit more, but is then killed by David. So
right.
I don't know. I was just thinking like, and then they go through this whole backstory of like he has a partner and they have a child and everything, and it's just like,
yeah,
is Clark really that interesting? I don't know if we needed to see his backstory. They try to make him seem more interesting than what he actually was. Nothing against the actor. I think the actor was fine, but it's just a character in general.
I think he was.
Here's what I would change. When Oliver was taken over at the end of season 1, I would have actually had him somehow switch to Clark's body, because I'm like, we can at least make Clark a little bit more interesting, give him some purpose. And then Oliver was already interesting on his own, and I wished we could have had more time outside of the ice cube to see how Oliver would have been around the other protagonists. I think that could have been a cool dynamic. He could have been another sort of tech savvy person alongside Mel Carey, and maybe they could have even had almost like a little like tech rivalry thing going on. I think that could have been kind of funny.
I think I actually agree with that one. It would have been nice to see more, because they had a pretty cool dynamic at the end of season 1, Mel Carey and Oliver. And yeah, it would have been fun to see more of that, and then maybe to see him kind of getting his memory back and coming back to Melanie. That would have been nice.
Aubrey Plaza, how awesome was she on the show?
She was. I'm certain that the range that she showed is why she's been in so many other shows. I haven't seen The White Lotus yet, but it's been winning all sorts of awards and everything.
Is she in that? I'll have to check.
Yeah, it's like some sort of like whodunit, as far as I know.
Okay.
It's kind of a strange show.
My introduction to her was Parks and Rec, right? And she's just like,
yeah.
I mean, her character is fun, but like, it's not very versatile. She's always just kind of like blah about everything.
Moody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's pretty much the same character in Scott Pilgrim. So I think she was typecast for a little while there.
Sort of, yeah. And I was really pleasantly surprised with her in this. I was not expecting her to be one of the strong actors on the show. And man, she was fucking awesome. I loved her in season 1, especially because her having so much screen time, it really got to show her just throughout the entirety of the show. It got to show her in a bunch of different scenarios, and she killed it every single time. Not only did she do a great job, but her character would just added so much to the show.
And I think Dan Stevens did a good job too. Was it worth getting killed off of Downton Abbey? I hope so, but
you guys don't think so?
He did a great job. I do.
It was painful. It's painful. That death is it catches you.
I know. But I do. I obviously I loved him in Legion, and so I'm glad he did it. I think he did a great job.
Yeah, same.
You know what? Also, a huge fucking shout out to Naveed Negabon for his portrayal of the Shadow King, Amal Farouk.
Oh yes,
Absolutely
Seriously.
untouchable on this show. His acting was superb from start
Truly.
to finish.
Yeah, he was
Mhm.
just so smooth, as I said before. Smooth as silk, that guy with his perfect
Yeah.
teeth.
And his
Exactly.
perfect voice.
Yeah. His perfect vocabulary.
Exactly, his mannerisms.
Yeah.
Oh, Steph, you still there?
Stella.
No, her timeline ended.
I'll remember her as she was.
Were you watching anything lately? Fillmore TV?
You know, I haven't really been watching anything lately. That's funny.
Just Legion?
Yeah, just that's the only show I've really made time for. That and One Piece. Occasionally, I'll pick up an episode of One Piece, which
You're not typically an anime guy, right?
no, not really. And I don't really like. It's not that I'm necessarily not a fan or that I don't appreciate it. It's more just that I don't really go out of my way for it. Like it just if somebody recommends something, I'm like, okay, cool, yeah. What about you? What are you watching?
Let me explain for the audience. Steph got booted and had trouble coming back in, so we just gotta wrap up the episode without her.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw Saltburn, and you've heard of this one, right? Strange kind of thriller.
What? I didn't know it was a thriller.
Yeah, there's some crazy uncomfortable shit going on with Saltburn, and some great acting though, man. Highly recommended. And that is a Amazon Prime original.
My dad was like, when he asked me if I'd seen it, I was like, no. And I said, what about you? What do you think about it? And he goes, it's different. And that's all I said. It's different.
He didn't give you the holy shit.
Holy shit.
Mm-mm. That was only The Exorcist.
That's right. Where he slouched in the seat and was like, holy shit. He was like sitting lower than me in his chair. I was like, me too, Dad.
I concur. The other thing I watched recently, Poor Things, and I already told you about that.
I gotta watch that.
Poor Things. That one is it's trippy. It is trippy. Obviously, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but man, I feel like Emma Stone, she fucking kills it. Great actress.
Right. I mean, honestly, I just don't think she can miss. She always knocks it out the park. I've enjoyed every one of her performances.
And just a reminder, Aflixionados is available wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop on the first Saturday of each month, 5 a.m. Pacific. If you like what you heard, please consider giving us a like, a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. As always, thank you for listening and joining Stephanie, Michael, and I, even though Stephanie got booted. This has been Aflixionados Podcast, episode 36, Legion, and we will see you all in the astral plane.
Bye.